Chapter 91. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uehara Shiraha shrugged. Don't sweat it. They ain't exactly worth crying over, and my peaceful life is way better than theirs ever was. Just because he couldn't do something out in the open didn't mean he wouldn't pull some strings behind the scenes. The Tsuneyashiro family thought their rules and Zero Squad would protect them. Truth was, he didn't give a damn about whether they lived or died, his word was law, period. You got that right. Kairaku Shunsui agreed, downing his wine in one gulp with a smile. Let's blow this joint. My treat, same bat time, same bat channel. Just like that, all his worries vanished. Uehara Bayu had a knack for putting people at ease. Even though he usually acted like nothing bothered him, that calm, detached vibe was contagious. You just didn't find that kind of chill anywhere else. After a bit, the two of them strolled out of the office, heading for the red light district. Another sleepless night was coming. In the real world, Ichigo Kurosaki was leading a double life. School by day, hollow slaying by night, before becoming a substitute Soul Reaper. He'd never even seen a hollow, but after getting his powers, they were coming out of the woodwork, including Inoue Oriheim's own brother. After purifying Inoue Hao, he took down the creep hollow that attacked his buddy Chad Yasutora and got a glimpse of the gates of hell. Along the way, Ichigo learned a lot about the Soul Society's dirty laundry, like how hollows were actually transformed human souls. Meanwhile, his powers were growing fast. This random Soul Reaper was quickly becoming as strong as your elite ones, and that was just scratching the surface. Shiroha Uehara was watching the whole show unfold. He saw Ichigo shove his soul into that dirty 627 doll. He saw Ichigo find the hollow that killed his mom, Masaki Kurosaki, only to fail at getting revenge and letting the hollow get away. He saw that goofy exorcist, Guanin Temple, straight up make a hollow. These scenes lined up perfectly with his memories. Uehara Shiraha also noticed Aizen and Uehara making their moves. They were playing a high-stakes game of chess, and Ichigo Kurosaki was their key piece, but none of that mattered to Uehara Shiraha. He just did his daily routines, leveled up his infinite sword system, and chilled with cards and drinks, living the good life. The entire three realms were brewing up a storm, but Uehara Shiraha was kicking back, staying out of it all. At the Siriidii, deep beneath the Pure Spirit Tower, was the central underground meeting hall. This was the office of the sages and judges of the 46th chamber, the Soul Society's highest court. Captains weren't allowed within these walls. Any Soul Reaper trespassing without permission would be charged with treason and face execution. But here was Captain Tozen Kaname of the 9th Division, sitting at a judge's seat, handling official business and dishing out justice. He was constantly writing and issuing orders, sentencing nobles who'd committed crimes. All orders from the 46th chamber went to the execution force through secret underground passages. Then, the execution force would relay them to the Godii 13. Tozen Kaname had the seals of the sages and judges, so he could issue orders in the name of the nobility. No one would dare go against them. Thanks to the 46th chamber, the nobles could always weasel their way out of justice. And now, those very same high-ranking officials of the 46th chamber were stone-cold dead, lying on the floor with their eyes wide open like dead fish. The once solemn council hall was now soaked in their dried blood. Most of the dead sages and judges were members of the Tsuneyashiro family, with Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu covering the whole place. Nobody could see the bloody scene, but honestly, after all the messed up stuff these people did, the council hall was probably cleaner now than it had been when they were alive. Tozen Kaname used special techniques to quickly read and process the latest reports. Through those cold words, he saw just how dark the Soul Society really was. The nobles were even more corrupt, cold-blooded, and selfish than he'd imagined. There was no way to just wipe them all out. To keep the plan running smoothly, Tozen Kaname had to stay calm, be relatively fair, and not dish out true justice. He thought to himself, Aizen-sama was right. How can we ever govern the Soul Society with these bugs around? As long as we're in the Godii 13, as long as we're still Soul Reapers, we can't touch them. As he was thinking, a voice came in, dripping with sarcasm. Wow, Captain Tozen is working so hard. Hope you ain't getting too attached to your new gig and forgetting what Aizen-sama told you, huh? As he spoke, two men in Soul Reaper uniforms and Captain's Haori walked in. The first guy had a gentle smile and thick, square glasses, looking like a kind grandpa. it was none other than Captain Aizen Sosuke of the 5th Division, the mastermind behind the massacre of the 46th Division. Behind him, Captain Ikemura Jin of the 3rd Division was squinting with a creepy smile like a cold-blooded snake, but Aizen and Tozen Kaname ignored Ikemura Jin's words. Tozen Kaname stood up straight and saluted Aizen. Aizen-sama, do you have any orders? According to the plan, they were supposed to rotate shifts watching the council hall to avoid any surprises. It wasn't Tozen's time to leave, so Aizen showing up meant something was up. You're doing great work, Aizen said softly. I just came to confirm a few things. Even though we have everything under control, we need to be extra cautious. A few days ago, Rukia Kuchiki saved Ichigo Kurosaki in the real world, losing her Soul Reaper powers in the process. After that, she used a Jigai that Kasuke Uehara gave her, completely hiding her spiritual pressure. Aizen had already found his target. A regular Jigai wouldn't stop Rukia from getting her powers back, or make her spiritual pressure disappear completely. Kasuke Uehara wanted to turn Rukia into a human, so he gave her a special Jigai. The reason he did that was to hide the Hogyoku inside her. Without any spiritual pressure, they couldn't find Rukia, and they couldn't get to the Hogyoku hiding in her soul. Once he realized that, he immediately killed everyone in the 46th chamber and took over completely. That way, Rukia and the Hogyoku couldn't escape, but Aizen still wanted to be extra careful and add a little insurance. Ikemura Jin grinned even wider. Aizen-sama, you're being too cautious. There ain't a soul in the Soul Society who can threaten us. Right? But even though he didn't want to admit it, Aizen really didn't have any weaknesses, making it impossible for him to do anything. Otherwise, he would have already run him through with his magic spear. Tozen Kaname nodded. Aizen-sama, everything is going according to plan. Justice is at hand. Ikemura Jin occasionally said something normal. Otherwise, he would have already stabbed him with his Suzumushi. Aizen's eyes narrowed. Yeah, everything seems to be perfect. Even Uehara Shiraha, who we've never been able to figure out, is still in the Soul Society, not making any trouble. But there's no way someone as smart as Uehara Shiraha hasn't noticed Rukia's change. So why hasn't he done anything? Ikemura Jin said hesitantly. Maybe he really didn't notice anything. He can't know everything, right? Or maybe he just doesn't want to be our enemy. After all, we know that Aizen-sama's Kyoka Suigetsu has got him in its spell. Unless he can break free, he ain't gonna be a problem. And Kyoka Suigetsu is perfect. He just couldn't read his old classmate. If he thought he didn't want the Hogyoku, then why had he caused so much trouble? But if he was ambitious, then why had he been living like a monk between the red light district and fancy houses? Either way, it didn't matter. Ikemura Jin just wanted to get more information. Tozen Kaname stayed quiet. Uehara Hakuba never played by the rules, making him impossible to predict. The other guy's crazy moves had made him look stupid before, so this time, he learned his lesson and kept his mouth shut. Aizen smiled even more sweetly. Back when the Hollows attacked, Uehara Baiyu was just a regular officer. But he was always ahead of the game, like he knew everything. That's insane. Considering what he's done, I think he might have time-space powers. He can see the past and maybe even predict the future. That's the only way to explain how he's so close to all-knowing. So, he probably knows our plan. Sure, he'd shown that Kyoka Suigetsu was working on him, but that just made Aizen feel more uneasy. Time-space powers were just too wild. Even if he had solid proof that he had the other guy, he wouldn't take it lightly. Control time. See the past. Predict the future. Tozen Kaname's face paled. Is that even possible? And what about his ice powers? His Bankai is ice-based. Ikemura Jin was curious too. In a way, Uehara Shiraha was his ally. The stronger he was, the better his own plans would work. Aizen looked towards the office of the head commander. We'll find out soon enough. Tosen, give the order to have Captain Soi Fan of the 2nd Division sneak into Naruki City. Tell her there's an unknown spiritual pressure and that she needs to investigate alone. Tosen Kaname nodded. Yes, Aizen-sama. Thinking about the setup in Naruki City, Aizen smirked. If you really can see time and control space, how are you gonna break an illusion that can fool even time itself? This is gonna be good. Meanwhile, in the hot springs deep under the Xuangjikyu training grounds, Uehara Baiyu was taking a dip. He was sitting in the steaming water, feeling totally relaxed. The heat would burn anyone else, but he was loving it. Comfy. Shihoin Yoruchi said, holding back her anger as she waited on him. She let this guy make so much money, but she got nothing except for better massage skills. It was infuriating. She wasn't about to lose. Uehara Baiyu closed his eyes and chuckled. Just as I expected from the Shihoin family's princess, your technique is top-notch. Just the right pressure. Shihoin Yoruchi perked up. So, you're gonna pay up and give me some more info? You owe me. You tried to set up my student, so you're gonna bleed some information. Uehara Shiraha said, still chilling. Shihoin Yoruchi was on another level. In every way, massage that would hurt anyone else felt great to him. With his body, only Shihoin Yoruchi could handle him. Shihoin Yoruchi raised an eyebrow, surprised. You knew. Then why didn't you stop it? That using Rukia to hide the Hogyoku was just a random idea that Uehara Kisuke had, but Uehara Shiraha seemed to know all along. That was shocking, Uehara Shiraha said calmly. Why would I stop him? You and Aizen aren't going to let anything happen to my student. Besides, a fledgling needs to face the storm if they want to spread their wings and conquer the sky. With his EX-level powers, even with all their schemes, they'd have to bow down to him in the end. He'd already taken the throne that Aizen wanted. Now, Uehara Baiyu just wanted to use the plot to complete more special missions. EX powers were strong, and he wanted more. The feeling of that power made him crave those special missions. Shihoin Yoruchi felt the confidence and dominance in Uehara Baiyu's words. She rolled her eyes and leaned in close, pressing her body against his and drawing circles on his chest. Since you're so confident, I need you to do me a favor. You know Soy Fawn is stubborn, and I'm worried something will happen to her, so, I want you to watch over her. That shouldn't be too hard for the commander-in-chief, right? Aizen was terrifying, and he'd do anything to get what he wanted. She was worried that this evil kid with glasses would go after someone she cared about. What's in it for me? Uehara Baiyu said, unfazed by the touch. A honey trap, huh? Then he'd eat the honey and dodge the trap. Shihoin Yoruchi's eyes flashed, and she puffed out her chest. What a jerk, always hard to deal with. He'd already gotten so much, but he still wouldn't budge. It was infuriating. Time to turn up the heat. Shihoin Yoruchi licked her lips, lowered her head, and bit Uehara Baiyu's earlobe. She's easy to fool. Don't you want me to be with her? You have a way with words, Yoruchi. Uehara Baiyu knew Yoruchi was just promising the world, but he still said enthusiastically, if it works, I'll make it worth your while. If she was gonna play games, he'd play along, he'd get her, and she wouldn't have a say in it. He'd use her to work out his anger. Little did Uehara Baiyu know, Shihoin Yoruchi would get the chance to make good on her promise very soon. Chapter 92. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Okay, here's the translated and adapted version of the provided text. At that moment, Ichigo Kurosaki glared at the bespectacled guy in front of him. Ishida Yuryu, right? He snapped. You say you're a Quincy, but what's that got to do with me? Why are you in my way? Ichigo hadn't asked to be a substitute Soul Reaper, or risk his neck fighting hollows. But after everything he'd been through, he was starting to get what being a Soul Reaper meant. He just hadn't figured on some kind of twisted competition to see who could kill more hollows. Lately, Ishida Yuryu had been wiping out every hollow that popped up nearby. Honestly, Ichigo hadn't minded. I told you, I hate Soul Reapers, Ishida Yuryu said, adjusting his glasses. His eyes narrowed. I'm going to prove Quincy's are stronger. Lame, Ichigo muttered. The guy was just being a pain. Students should be hitting the books. What was the point of all this fighting? He could be doing his homework. Ishida Yuryu raised an eyebrow. Oh, yeah, I remember. You're just a puppet for the Soul Society. You don't dare move without your master's orders. Being a hot-blooded teenager, Ichigo couldn't let that slide. He yanked the soul candy from his stuffed bear, swallowed it, and transformed into his Soul Reaper form. You want a lesson? Fine, you got it. As the Mod Soul Khan, he took over Ichigo Kurosaki's vacant body and grumbled, I told you not to be so rude. How dare you treat me like this? You're gonna get it, Ishida Yuryu scoffed. So sloppy. I'm totally winning this. Shut your trap. This isn't about you. How do you want to do this? Let's go. Ichigo hefted Zangetsu. Ishida Yuryu pinched a coin-like object between two fingers. Whoever kills the most hollows in 24 hours wins. Sounds simple enough. What's that you're holding? Ichigo frowned, a bad feeling creeping over him. This competition sounded simple, but hollows didn't show up that often. Usually, you'd be lucky to see 2 or 3 in a day. That wasn't enough to decide anything. So where was this guy getting all these hollows? This is bait. Crush it, scatter it around, and it'll draw hollows in. Ishida Yuryu didn't hesitate before crushing the bait. Suddenly, the sky twisted, and black cracks appeared like scars. Strange, low roars echoed from the rifts as hollows poked their heads out, their eyes locked on Karakura Town's residents, a wave of spiritual pressure radiating from them. Some people with higher spiritual power felt their chests tighten, a sense of dread washing over them, but they couldn't figure out why. Ichigo's sisters, Orihime Inoue, and Chad Sato, all had higher spiritual power and knew exactly where the danger was, but they were powerless to stop it. Ichigo realized his sisters might be in danger. He forgot all about chewing out Ishida Yuryu and raced off toward his sisters. Back in the Soul Society, Uehara Shiraha was watching everything unfold. His observation haki was so powerful, he could keep tabs on the entire 3 realms, even more so than Enel. Right now, his senses were sharper than blood blue during the 1000-year blood war. The real scholar knows everything without leaving home. He saw Ichigo Kurosaki in his Soul Reaper form again. Ichigo's unique Soul Reaper look was pretty cool, but too bad it's wasted on him. On the streets of Soul Society, Uehara Shiraha suddenly got a system notification. Congratulations to the host for completing the daily task. Soak in the hot spring to relieve fatigue. Reward spiritual pressure +1, instant step +1. A surge of energy coursed through him. His spiritual pressure and physique were noticeably improved. Uehara Baiyu nodded, satisfied. Even with so much power, the attribute point bonus couldn't be ignored. Eating hot pot and singing karaoke was the perfect way to level up. Walking down the street, Uehara Baiyu paused. Looking toward the shadows, an executioner appeared, kneeling, holding out a document. Commander Uehara, new orders from the Central 46. Uehara Baiyu took the report. It read, Captain Soifan of the 2nd Division was ambushed in Naruki City and needs immediate assistance. That he rolled his eyes. Wouldn't the 5th Division be responsible? But Aizen can't give himself orders. Looks like Hairgel's feeling himself again, now that he's got control of the 46 chamber. I wonder what he's cooking up. Soifan's got a big mouth, so what Yoruchi said must have gotten to her. I'll have to pass on this sister 2-for-1 special. Uehara Shiraha knew Aizen was behind the attack on Soifan and the sudden, strange orders. After all, the Central 46 had become the Central 46 Corpses, and Aizen was the only one who could issue orders now. To be fair, Tosen was doing his best to run the Soul Society. The Soul Reapers were wondering why the Central 46 had become so fair and just. The entire Soul Society seemed a little better. And now, Ichigo Kurosaki was about to hit a critical point, where he could show off his abilities. And grow. For this crisis to occur in Naruki City was too convenient. Aizen was trying to lure him away, to keep him from interfering. At the same time, he was using the opportunity to test him, to see if he really wasn't interested in the Hogyoku. That Aizen was playing it safe. Before fusing with the Hogyoku, Aizen was flawless. After starting his evolution, he became a bit complacent, even getting rid of Kyoka Suigetsu and saying, I don't need it anymore. But when fighting the Soul King, Kyoka Suigetsu was the MVP. Realizing Aizen's plan, Uehara Baiyu headed straight for Naruki City, not to get a free sister 2-for-1, but because he wanted to help. As soon as Uehara Baiyu disappeared, the executioner got to his feet and left. Uehara Shiraha arrived in the real world. He could see the changes in Karakura Town and Naruki City better than he could in the Soul Society. In Karakura town, Ichigo Kurosaki and Yuryu Ishida were trying to take down hollows. But there were too many. Even Rukia, who didn't have much power left, and the two kids from Uehara Kisuke's shop had joined the fight. Of course, hollow bait couldn't draw that many hollows. This was Aizen's doing. He wanted to push Ichigo Kurosaki to his limit. Yuryu Ishida, breathing hard with cracked knuckles, must have been shocked by the bait's potency. The guy had said he wouldn't let hollows hurt anyone, because he would deal with every hollow the bait attracted. Now he was eating his words. The Ishida family always put up a good show before getting destroyed. Thinking of Ishida Ryujin from the past, Uehara Baiyu thought, if it wasn't for you guys, these years would have been boring. You're the real heroes. Thinking this, he looked toward Naruki City. Soifan, in her tight uniform and shirkai, was battling a black hollow. She seemed fine for now. Uehara Baiyu saw the trap on the battlefield. This must be the gift Aizen had prepared. He headed in that direction, unconcerned. With the infinite sword system and mind stone, he could take on a group of captains without breaking a sweat. Aizen hadn't fused with the Hogyoku yet. The surprise Aizen prepared was just a show. As Uehara Shiraha appeared, the monitoring equipment in the underground meeting hall beeped. Sensing the spiritual pressure, Tosen Kaname told Aizen, Lord Aizen, Uehara Shiraha has arrived. Aizen nodded, watching the monitors with anticipation. Ikemara Jin squinted and said, he knows it's a trap, but he walks right in. What a loyal guy. Tosen Kaname's expression was conflicted. He had mixed feelings about Uehara Shiraha. He feared Uehara Shiraha's power, as he could ruin their plans, but in the Soul Society, the Imperial Army and Uehara Shiraha might be the only ones with true justice. The Godii 13, nobles, and other forces had sins. The Godii army was clean, from top to bottom. The only problem was that it was involved with the nobles. Uehara Shiraha had stayed neutral, which Tosen Kaname admired, but if he opposed Lord Aizen, he would have to kill him. Jin, don't underestimate him, and don't jump to conclusions. Aizen knew the two were talented, especially Ikemara Jin, but even Ikemara Jin underestimated Uehara Shiraha. Aizen never expected the traps to work. As Uehara Shiraha approached Soifan, an invisible force covered the area. His Zanpakuto ability was suppressed. Soifan couldn't use Shirkai. Uehara Shiraha thought of the mutated hollow that killed Shiba Kaien. Aizen may have reproduced that ability, sealing Zanpakutos, but it had limits. Maybe that's why it didn't appear in the original story. Or maybe Aizen feared his Zanpakuto and wanted to recreate the ability. Uehara Shiraha's pupils narrowed. In the distance, two beams of light tore through the void and landed nearby. Seeing the beams, Uehara Baiyu frowned and rushed over. Too powerful. Spiritual pressures rose from the impact points. The pressure was heavy, cold, and greedy, but it wasn't pure hollow pressure. Uehara Shiraha understood it was Arankar pressure. Sensing the immense spiritual pressure, Soifan paled. The bull-headed hollow in black armor was enough, and now there were two more enemies. If her Zanpakuto wasn't sealed, she could use her Bankai, but after coming to the present world, she had lost the ability to seal her Bankai. But now, she had no chance. If she hadn't felt the man's spiritual pressure, Soifan would have been desperate. However, the opponent's Zanpakuto ability might also be sealed, and the situation was not optimistic. Soifan gritted her teeth and fought the black hollow. Uehara Shiraha had deliberately leaked his spiritual pressure for Soifan to sense. He wanted to give her hope, then crush it. If Soifan knew, she would curse him. Her life-or-death battle was just a show. As for the Zanpakuto ability, Uehara Hakuha's Danku could be used normally, but the power was relatively weak. His Danku wouldn't be sealed easily. His Zanpakuto ability was White Season. You sealed your Zanpakuto. What does it have to do with my stand? Uehara Hakuha arrived at the landing site. He stood and saw a small mountain-like hollow destroying everything. Humans were fleeing. The humanoid Arankar laughed. Another Arankar spread its wings. Uehara Shiraha vanished. He was on the ground. Seeing Uehara Shiraha appear, the Arankars were stunned. They remembered their mission. The Arankar gave up chasing humans. You're Uehara Shiraha, right? Chapter 93. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as I take you out, Aizen's reward is mine. Talk about lucky. Up above, another Arankar dove down toward Uehara Shiraha, shouting, "Come here, watch it. This Soul Reaper's no joke." Relax, Firth, you worry too much. Khmer, a hulking brute over 10 feet tall, just glared at Uehara Shiraha, making no move to attack. He planned to double-team, just to be safe. Aizen himself gave this order, so he wasn't about to mess it up. Facing the two Arrancar closing in, Uehara Shiraha stayed cool. These guys looked like they still had a lot of hollow traits, but they were way more evolved than those chumps, Leo, Rodney, and Jerome. They were complete Arrancar, serious heavy hitters, probably on par with someone like Captain Muguruma Kensei, but that was it. To Uehara Shiraha, these two looked like nothing more than chicken feed, just ants. Khmer and Firth weren't your average Arrancar, and they were still cautious, especially Khmer. The more he looked, the more he got a bad feeling about the Soul Reaper's eyes. There was something familiar about that gaze. Then it hit him, that's the same way Arrancar looked at humans, like they were slabs of meat. Khmer exploded. He had incredible strength. How dare this punk look at him like that? Khmer lost it, roaring as he charged Uehara Shiraha like a rhino on PCP. His spiritual pressure was so intense, he could probably crush mountains. Uehara Shiraha casually flicked his wrist, and Khmer was sent flying like a trash bag in a hurricane. Then, Firth swooped in, sword raised for a strike. He was lightning fast, able to end fights in the blink of an eye. He thought Uehara Shiraha's flash step was nothing special, so he figured he had this in the bag. Firth didn't know Uehara Shiraha had just been toying with him, not even using 10% of his speed. Uehara Shiraha easily sidestepped the blade, saying calmly, "Trying to race me? You've got a death wish." Firth scoffed, "You're just asking for it. I'm about to show you real speed. If you can even touch me once, I'll be impressed." Firth vanished, a blur of motion as he slashed again. Khmer, who had just gotten back to his feet, was completely lost. What just happened? Why was he on the ground? Then it clicked, and his face went white. He couldn't believe he'd been knocked on his ass so easily. His hollow body was built like a tank, covered in armor-like skin. His strength was off the charts, a full-on blitz like a falling mountain. Yet the dude just brushed him aside, as he was still reeling. Firth went flying past him and slammed into the ground. Khmer was floored. The Soul Reaper was way faster than Firth, but how was that possible? Firth's Sonido was supposed to be untouchable. Firth was just as confused. This Soul Reaper was crazy fast and strong. He hadn't even seen him move, couldn't even keep up. His own ability was supposed to crank up his Sonido, but he was still getting stomped. Unbelievable. The guy's speed was beyond his nerve's ability to even register. What kind of speed was that? But then Firth's eyes narrowed, and he dug deep for another surge of power. This time, he came at Uehara Shiraha even faster, more agile than before. Seeing the Arrancar kick it up a notch, Uehara Shiraha started to get serious. While keeping an eye on Ichigo and Soy Fan, he casually slapped Firth around until the guy was having an existential crisis. Firth couldn't figure it out. This shouldn't be happening. Why was this happening? How could a Soul Reaper be this strong without his Zanpakuto? He couldn't even land a hit. Was he the clown here? As Firth was losing his mind, Khmer's hands went clammy and he started sweating bullets. Those two were fighting way too fast. He couldn't even follow the action, but he knew it was bad. He'd never seen Firth get humiliated like this, and the Soul Reaper was so calm, like they were nothing to him. He looked at Uehara Shiraha, who was still unfazed, fear and shock in his eyes. "I heard that Edrad Leoness and Nakim Grindina got taken down by this guy. I didn't believe it. How could some Soul Reaper beat two Espada at once? But now I see, no way those two losers could take this monster." Khmer gripped his Zanpakuto. He was getting ready to go all out. Normally, he couldn't even see their moves, let alone jump in. He and Firth had the most complete Arrancar powers, and using their Resurrection was the only way to turn the tables. Those Espada might have come before them, but they didn't have this kind of juice. That's what kept Khmer and Firth in the game. Damn it, this can't be happening. Firth didn't want to believe it, but he was getting outmatched in speed. He flew into a rage and leaped back. He raised the Zanpakuto with flame patterns in the air and shouted, "Spread your wings, red flame wings." Suddenly, a blast of cold wind swept through the area, and the clouds turned dark. The heavy spiritual pressure twisted into red flames and engulfed Firth. As the Resurrection completed, Firth went back to 100%, his injuries disappeared, and his spiritual pressure was 10 times higher than before. The wings on his back became streaked with red, like they were on fire. Feeling the surge of power, Firth laughed like a maniac. This is probably the first time you've seen an Arrancar's Resurrection. Unlike your Zanpakuto release, Resurrection is the total unleashing of our true power. Our Zanpakuto is just a container for our hollow power. I was incomplete before, but now this is the real me. I'm 5 times stronger than before. Impressed by my awesome power, but with the red flame wings Resurrection, Firth felt like a goddamn superhero again. Color me surprised, Uehara Shiraha said, like he was watching a movie. I'm shocked your Resurrection is so weak. I was waiting to see your ultimate power, but this is it. These two Arrancar were something else, possessing unique talents, but whether it was their raw abilities or their Resurrection, it was all useless against Uehara Shiraha. If a regular ant is 5 times stronger, is it not still an ant? He didn't have time for these weaklings when Ichigo and Soifon had far more potential. Quit looking down on me. Burn, red flame wings. As Firth flapped his fiery wings, scorching flames raced toward Uehara Shiraha. The air instantly turned blistering. He couldn't even use his Zanpakuto, so there was no way they could lose. At the same time, Khmer went into his Resurrection. His spiritual pressure and size exploded. Black, bone-like spears grew out of his chest. They were cold, hard, and looked unbreakable. He released a crushing wave of power as his body morphed into a whirling tornado. Crush him, Black Dragon Fang. Instantly, flames and hurricanes surrounded Uehara Shiraha. The raw spiritual pressure and the power of the Resurrection were on par with a Bankai. Against the two ferocious Arrancar, Uehara Shiraha stood his ground, flashed, and unleashed 2 quick strikes. At least you can die by my hand, so you're welcome. It's not that you're that strong, it's that I'm just feeling generous. You. Firth seethed. He was about to tear into him when he saw a flash of light. Uehara Shiraha, who had been so far away, was suddenly right in front of him, sheathing his blade. Firth tried to speak, but he couldn't. His eyes locked onto the godlike figure and the blinding light of the blade. He didn't sense any danger, any force, but he could feel his life slipping away. His armor was like paper. The strike was faster than light. Before he could process what was happening, it was over. All he could do was watch his life fade, like clouds in the wind, or night giving way to dawn. From the start, they were in different leagues. Sorry, Aizen. Khmer fell to his knees. The hole opened in his chest, and his heart turned into dust. He had no idea how he and Firth had been killed. Was the gap really that wide? It didn't matter anymore. Uehara Shiraha didn't even glance at the fading Arrancar. Instead he headed toward Soifon. Aizen, this. Jin Ikamaru's eyes widened. He'd thought the Arrancar would give Uehara Shiraha a little trouble after Resurrection, at least slow him down. Instead, they were done in a blink. He wasn't sure he could have dropped them that easily. He looked up at Aizen, thinking, you probably could have. The strength of the top tier is terrifying, gotta be extra careful. Tozen's face darkened as he gripped Suzumushi. He thought about jumping to the human world and taking care of this problem himself. Uehara Shiraha was too dangerous. He couldn't use his Zanpakuto, so now was the perfect opportunity. If the 3 of them went together, it'd be a guaranteed win. As expected, it's Uehara Shiraha, the strongest genius in the Soul Society, whose growth rate is truly astonishing. Aizen said, not looking worried at all, because he wasn't. If Uehara Shiraha didn't have this much power, he wouldn't have bothered setting this trap. The fun was just getting started. While Uehara Shiraha was wrecking the enemy, Soifon was in trouble. Her face was pale, and her forehead was covered in sweat. Her eyes were still burning with determination, but her body was covered in cuts and scrapes and her spiritual pressure was fading. The hollow in front of her was too weird and too strong. Without her Zanpakuto, her attack power had plummeted, and she couldn't even scratch the hollow's armor. Soifon dodged a punch from the bull-headed hollow. Landing, she threw a kunai, aiming for the hollow's shoulder. The kunai didn't even break the skin, let alone the armor. Soifon channeled her spiritual pressure and unlocked the seal on the kunai. Boom! The kunai exploded, unleashing flames and shockwaves. Annoying little bug, die. The hollow ignored the explosion and focused its spiritual pressure on its horns. A black Zero aimed at Soifon. The hollow's attack engulfed her. The Zero blotted out the sun, plunging the area into darkness. The pressure shook the earth and surrounding buildings, even outside Hueco Mundo. This Zero was terrifying, on par with one from the Espada. Soifon tried to escape, but she was too slow under the pressure. her heart sank, and she channeled her spiritual pressure to reduce the damage. Even if she couldn't win, she had to buy time, otherwise, if that hollow joined the other two, Uehara Shiraha would be in danger. Even he would have trouble dealing with that monster, as she steeled herself for the attack. A familiar voice called out. Looks like Captain Soifan needs a hand again. Uehara Shiraha stood in front of Soifan, his right hand outstretched. His spiritual pressure crushed the Zero. Seeing him, Soifan was relieved. After all that had happened before, she felt safe whenever she saw that familiar face. Chapter 94. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Getting an earful was enough to set her off. Same old song and dance, same irritating voice. This guy still knows how to push my buttons. Soifang's jaw dropped when she saw Shiraha Uehara casually swat away that terrifying virtual flash. She hadn't realized how strong he was. First, he took down two powerful enemies without even drawing his Zanpakuto. Now, he just brushed off that enemy's strongest move with one hand. He's even stronger than when she first sized up Jin Ikamaru and Byakuya Kachiki 20-odd years ago. All these years, she's been busting her but to get stronger, always on the front lines. She thought she was closing the gap, but it just got wider. Soifang was floored, and her eyes locked on Shiraha Uehara, a mix of emotions swirling inside her. She's always admired strength, and the guy in front of her was the definition of it. It's hard not to be impressed. Another bug crawls out. The black hollow sneered, but when Uehara Baiyu brushed aside his attack, a roar ripped from his throat, and blood-red light blazed from his eyes and hollow hole. His whole body was bathed in a crimson aura, like something out of a scary story. The bloody light made his face even more grotesque. The inhuman roar was followed by a wave of pure, animalistic power. His spiritual pressure surged like a tidal wave, threatening to drown everything. That raw, intense pressure crawled under Soifang's skin, making her tremble, but her eyes never wavered. Soifang knew how dangerous this hollow was. His spiritual pressure was higher than hers, a captain, and his fighting style was unpredictable. The longer the fight went on, the stronger he got. With their Zanpakuto sealed, this enemy was a serious problem. This hollow wasn't like anything she'd fought before. It was off. A monster, she quickly called out. General Uehara, be careful. This thing gets stronger as it fights. We have to end this fast. Uehara Baiyu felt the violent, icy spiritual pressure and nodded. A monster, all right. He studied the hollow, something naggingly familiar about it. Bull's head, human body, blade arms, tall, with red hair and black bone armor. Only his eyes were red. He resembled the white hollow in both looks and power. Swap that red hair for white, and they'd be twins, except, a red crystal blocked his hollow hole. The blood-red light leaked out, staining everything red, especially his eyes. It was creepy. The white hollow was called the white hollow because he was black on the outside, white on the inside. So, this guy, black on the outside, red on the inside, should be called the red hollow. Aizen, that sly dog, was pulling out all the stops. First, the white hollow, now a red hollow. He was dyeing his hair now, probably aiming for the whole rainbow. The opponent's spiritual pressure was stronger and more complex than the white hollow, and felt very familiar. Like the white, this red hollow was another Frankenstein monster, stitched together with a ton of Shinigami souls. He could get stronger by draining spiritual pressure from the Shinigami, and who knows what else he had hidden up his sleeve. This was a mutated white, a whole new breed of hollow, something from outside. The original story, this had to be Aizen's latest project, specifically designed to take him down. This was getting interesting. A black blur, and the mutated white was on Uehara Baiyu in a flash. For such a massive thing, he was seriously fast. Soifang gasped. This monster was definitely stronger than before. How were they supposed to beat something that got stronger with every hit, without their Zanpakuto? For a split second, even she felt a flicker of despair. Uehara Shiraha calmly raised his sword, easily blocking the hollow's attack. He knew better than to underestimate the mutated hollow. The original white hollow had power on par with a Shirkai-level captain, and almost killed Shiba Ishin. Captains weren't exactly pushovers in the Shinigami world. Not everyone got to be used as a measuring stick for power. Right, 50-50 Rokuguruma Kensei. Of course, to Uehara Shiraha, all the captains were just small fries. In his eyes, ordinary Shinigami captains were like ants, ready to be squashed at any moment, but Uehara Shiraha wasn't rushing things, he was observing, he wanted to see if he was right about something. In the blink of an eye, Uehara Baiyu had exchanged dozens of blows with the mutated white, or, more accurately, he had casually blocked the Hollow's furious assault. The Hollow had become a whirlwind of black, his sharp blade arms turning into a spinning meat grinder. The beast's massive body was a storm of death, relentlessly hammering at Uehara Baiyu, blades aimed at his vitals with blinding speed. Soifong couldn't even follow their movements. She knew she wouldn't last long against an attack that fierce. After another barrage, the mutated white unleashed his special attack, firing a hollow bullet from his mouth while his arms blurred, creating a swirling, ink-black dance of blades. This wasn't just some random move. This was a Shinigami swordsmanship technique, amplified tenfold. Soifong couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. How could a Hollow use Shinigami techniques? She'd felt it from the start, something off about this Hollow. Now that she could actually see it in action, the feeling was stronger than ever. Uehara Baiyu countered the mutated white's deadly dance with ease, but the Hollow was growing stronger, starting to unlock new, strange abilities. With a roar, the red crystal in his chest pulsed with light, two blue glows wrapped around his arms, condensing into solid forms. An invisible force began to drain the surrounding spirit particles. The air thinned, the mutated white was bathed in red light, as if unleashing some hidden power. Blue energy chains wrapped around his arms, two completely different energies surged, and the Hollow's power spiked. His spiritual pressure exploded in a violent hurricane, sending sand and rocks flying, the air itself shimmering. Uehara Baiyu watched the red light and blue chains and thought. Another stitched-together monster, just as I thought. But you can't just copy Ichigo's powers. If I can't make it work, neither can you. He let his guard down, seeming to struggle. To onlookers, it looked like Uehara Baiyu was being pushed back. After all, the Hollow's current strength was pretty insane. It was understandable. That's Shinigami power. What the hell is this thing? So Uehara Baiyu's fighting that? If he hadn't shown up, I'd be dead. He saved me again. Soifong felt the Shinigami power radiating off the Hollow, and it only deepened her confusion. How could a Hollow have Shinigami power? What were the crystals and blue chains, and why did they make her feel so threatened? He was getting stronger too fast. The already terrifying pressure was becoming heavier, stronger. He had become several times more powerful. He might even be stronger than Captain Commander Yamamoto. How could he grow so strong, so fast? What kind of monster was this? Soifong stole a worried glance at Uehara Hakuho. She bit her lip, thinking, if Uehara Baiyu can't beat him, I'll give him an opening to escape, even if it kills me. I owe him that much. But then, Uehara Baiyu got serious. He wanted to see if the monster's powers were just for show, or if he could actually wield the Hollow, Quincy, and Shinigami powers. He flashed forward, right in front of the Hollow. His swordsmanship was top tier. It was as good as a Shinigami could possibly get. With pure skill, he could easily take down a high-ranking captain, and that was saying something. His sword flashed, tearing through the air. That one strike shattered the mutated white's defenses and lopped off an arm. Soifong, who had been ready to sacrifice herself, was stunned. She couldn't even see Uehara Baiyu move. It was too fast, but there was unimaginable power in that one blow. She had only caught a glimpse of his intent, and it was like falling into an ice cave, like a small animal caught in the gaze of a predator. She hadn't felt that way since she first joined the Onmitsukido. After becoming someone's personal guard, she thought she had become fearless and would never again feel so powerless. But she was wrong. She was still weak in front of this man. Damn, that's some swordsmanship. Way better than mine. That's terrifying. Jin Ikamaru's eyes narrowed behind the monitor. Deep down, he was actually a little excited. Tozen Kaname was grim. No average captain could withstand that. He's getting more dangerous by the minute. Even through the spiritual pressure readings on the equipment, he could feel the raw power of that strike. He was shaken. Any captain knew what that kind of skill meant. Uehara Hakuho had the Zanpakuto skills and crazy swordsmanship. A 100-year-old Shinigami shouldn't be that good. How much talent was that? He wasn't just a genius. He was a freak of nature. Even Tozen Kaname, who always sought justice, felt a twinge of hopelessness in the face of such a monster. Even the all-knowing Aizen was impressed. Not bad. Uehara Hakuha is definitely not just another Shinigami. Interesting, that might sound like a normal compliment, but coming from Aizen, it was a big deal. If life was a game, everyone else was playing a survival horror, and Aizen was playing a casual game where nothing was hard or even fun. It was fun to play a game once in a while. But if you played it all the time, even the gods would get bored. All he saw were weak insects, either powerless or powerful but not wise. The world was boring. Then he met Uehara Shiraha and Kurosaki Ichigo, two guys who were starting to show some serious potential. He was looking forward to what they could do, so, he had set the stage for them and wanted to see what they were going to do. Tozen moved to draw his sword. Lord Aizen, should we use this opportunity to take out Uehara Shiraha? That if he hadn't met Aizen, he would never have been Uehara Shiraha's enemy, and he might even have given his life to him. Tozen Kaname had more respect for Uehara Shiraha's integrity than anyone. Uehara Shiraha liked to drink, play cards, and party in the red light district. But he knew that the other guy wasn't like other Shinigami and was a man of justice, but that's why Tozen Kaname had to get rid of him, because that was the only way he could make a world with no Shinigami and only justice. Before Aizen could speak, Jin Ikamaru cut in. The test subjects that Lord Aizen carefully picked aren't that simple. Just watch. That he could feel Aizen's good mood. He was enjoying this. He knew Aizen wouldn't take action against Uehara Shiraha, at least not yet. Aizen must be sure he could keep things under control. Did he have the Hogyoku to thank? Or was there something else? Aizen shook his head. This hollow, though a freak accident, has real research value. Its power structure is very similar to Ichigo Kurosaki's, but it's still a failure, only good for a single use. It only exists to highlight Hakuha Uehara. Beings who lurk in the shadows are not our friends. Tozen Kaname had to stop himself from saying, I got it. You're a genius. That he didn't really get it, but he wasn't going to stop Lord Aizen from getting some praise. He still had faith in the hollow. After all, it was built using their best tech and was the culmination of all their hollow research. Plus, he had added some power from the Hogyoku and Sailaporo grands. It was basically unstoppable, and Hakuha Uehara couldn't even use his Zanpakuto. They had the advantage. Jin Ikamaru threw up his hands. I don't get it. That he could tell that Aizen wasn't optimistic about the new type of hollow white. He just wasn't letting on, and he was confused. This thing had a lot of potential. Why didn't Aizen like it? Was Uehara Baiyu stronger than they thought? Uehara Baiyu had completely overwhelmed the mutated white. Even though the hollow was still growing stronger, it wasn't enough to stand up to his swordsmanship. Imagine the hollow adding 1,000 to his power every minute. In a short time, he'd have tens of thousands. That might sound amazing. Chapter 95. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uehara Baiyu's swordsmanship alone packed a punch in the millions, maybe even tens of millions. No way anyone could outlast him. No matter how hard they tried, his sword flashed, each strike landing a solid hit on the mutated hollow white, but he was careful not to target any vital spots. Thanks to its super speed regeneration, the hollow white quickly grew back its arm and was still in the fight. It roared, backing away, the red glow and spiritual pressure around it intensifying, and the two blue chains began to glow faintly. Seeing this, Uehara Baiyu nodded. Looks like those chains, like Quincy spirit particle weapons, aren't just for show. This guy really can tap into Quincy power. Regular super speed regeneration isn't this strong. Combining spirit particle control with regeneration is barely enough to keep up with my attacks, but if that's all there is, it's not very impressive. Just then, the mutated hollow white launched another attack. A flash of red and black light erupted between its horns. A powerful hollow flash materialized in a heartbeat and blasted at Uehara Baiyu point blank. Instantly, a red and black ocean of spiritual energy engulfed him. That hollow flash is faster and stronger. Soifong gasped, ready to rush in and help. This hollow white's flash was even more devastating than the Espada's King hollow flash. It vaporized everything in its path, leaving nothing but scorched earth. The landscape was completely changed in seconds. Even though Uehara Baiyu was surrounded by the intense power of the hollow flash, he stood firm, unyielding as a rock against crashing waves. Casually, Uehara Baiyu unleashed a white strike, obliterating the hollow flash before him. Awesome, by de. Soifang murmured in awe, her face filled with admiration. As a master of hand-to-hand combat, she understood exactly what that white strike meant. When she saw the hollow unleash that terrifying flash, she was ready to jump in. But he defused the whole situation with a basic white strike. She realized she was in over her head in this battle. Soifang was once again reminded of her weakness. After the hollow flash, the mutated hollow swung its arm, aiming a blow at Uehara Baiyu. The spirit particle chains on its arms glinted. Uehara Baiyu knew the speed of the hollow flash was thanks to those chains. Controlling spirit particles made moves more powerful and allowed for quicker special attacks. Kurosaki Ichigo was a prime example. Getsuga Tensho had both speed and power. Really, it was more like a Quincy's sacred destruction arrow, but this hollow was terrible at utilizing Quincy power. It was too weak to be a threat. He rarely found such a worthy opponent, so Uehara Baiyu decided to make the most of it. He glanced at Soifang and smirked. I noticed you were struggling against this hollow, Soifang. You're not getting the most out of Suzumabachi. Watch closely, this is how you use it. Soifang's head swam with confusion. There's a limit to how much you can look down on someone. Sure, he was strong, but she had centuries of Zanpakuto training behind her. She had mastered both Suzumabachi's Shirkai and Bankai. She didn't need any instruction. Besides, Suzumabachi was her Zanpakuto. Nobody else could use it, and with that weird barrier in place, she hadn't been able to release her Zanpakuto at all. How could Uehara Baiyu show her how to use Suzumabachi? Suddenly, Soifang's expression did a 180, her confidence turned to astonishment and shock. Uehara Baiyu focused his spiritual pressure and chanted Suzumabachi's Shirkai release phrase, sting all enemies to death, Suzumabachi. As he poured in spiritual pressure, the Zanpakuto in his hand shifted shape, finally settling into a golden, bee-like stinger on his middle finger. He was chanting the Zanpakuto's release, but he was really using the EX rank ability, Unlimited Blade Works. Under the influence of Unlimited Blade Works, Uehara Baiyu easily achieved Suzumabachi's Shirkai. This so-called barrier was a joke to Unlimited Blade Works. EX abilities are on another level. Even the Blood Alliance seal that kept the Zero Squad from using Bankai couldn't seal Unlimited Blade Works. This temporary barrier in Naruki City was nothing. He just unleashed the power of Unlimited Blade Works, which transcended almost everyone's limits, including their imaginations. The Unlimited Blade Works, superior to even the power of Transcendence, finally showed its brilliance in the world of the Shinigami. Seeing Uehara Baiyu's Shirkai, Soifang was speechless. That was Suzumabachi's Shirkai. She couldn't even release her own, but Uehara Baiyu could. Was the barrier playing favorites? Where was the justice? Soifang was confused, bewildered, and completely taken aback, and Uehara Baiyu wasn't done yet. To teach, he deliberately lowered his spiritual pressure to Soifang's level and went at the mutated hollow white. Before, Soifang and the mutated hollow white were evenly matched. Now, facing a version of it several times stronger, Soifang would be dead in a heartbeat. But Uehara Baiyu, now using Soifang as a template, started dominating the hollow white. In his hands, Suzumabachi was as swift as lightning, covering the hollow white's body with black bee crests. If the hollow white's battle sense wasn't so strong, making sure that it didn't get stung in the same spot twice, it would have been finished already, but at this rate, it was only a matter of time. Seeing the familiar bee crests, Soifang was sold. It was Suzumabachi's Shirkai, and the same Shirkai, the same spiritual pressure, yielded dramatically different results in different hands. In her hands, Suzumabachi was a sewing needle, no thread at all. In his, it was a Tommy gun, spitting out hits 100 times a second. Uehara Baiyu's Shirkai Suzumabachi pulverized her in terms of speed and strength. It was embarrassing. Soifang felt terrible. She glared resentfully at the Zanpakuto in her hand. If Suzumabachi could talk, it would say, "Don't look at me. Look at yourself. This is your shortcoming, not mine." Deep down, Soifang knew it was true. It wasn't about the sword, it was about the user. With his swordplay and spiritual pressure on her level, Uehara Baiyu could kill her with an ordinary needle. It was total domination. Uehara Baiyu and she were worlds apart in every way. Over there, the battle between Uehara Baiyu and the mutated hollow was ending. He stepped lightly behind the hollow, then, 2 overlapping B-crests appeared on its back, the Shirkai. Suzumabachi's ability was 2-hit kill. Each strike left a special B-crest. When 2 crests appeared on the same spot, the 2-hit kill ability activated, instantly incapacitating the target. Of course, this trick didn't work on anyone significantly stronger. In the show, Soifang used 2-hit kill on Aizen, but it had zero effect. Aizen basically said, in Shinigami fights, spiritual pressure is everything, and Soifang was done for. But the mutated hollow didn't have Aizen's spiritual pressure. Even if Uehara Baiyu only used Soifang's level of spiritual pressure, it was enough to finish it off. With the 2-hit kill activated, the mutated hollow crashed to the ground. Even its super speed regeneration couldn't save it. In Uehara Baiyu's hands, Shirkai Suzumabachi was more terrifying than a normal Bankai. I actually won. Soifang exclaimed in shock. Uehara Baiyu had just used her moves and spiritual pressure. She had struggled against her opponent, but he had breezed through, and Uehara Baiyu's opponent was several times stronger than hers. The gap was massive. Uehara Baiyu's combat rhythm and skills were unmatched. She could only tap into 70% of her combat potential, while he could squeeze out 200%. That's the difference. Looking at Uehara Baiyu, who was both strong and elegant, Soifang was somewhat relieved. And thought, he has a bad rep and is kind of fickle, but being favored by powerful figures is an honor in some ways. As head of the Onmitsukido and a noble of the Siriidii, she's used to the darker side of things. Compared to the lower-class nobles, Uehara Baiyu, who's just a little promiscuous, is a moral paragon. Besides, the strong can have whatever they want. Having multiple partners is normal. Uehara Baiyu's the strongest of the strong, so anything he does is justified. But her face turned red, and she cursed herself internally. What an idiot. I almost forgot about my lady. No. I have forgotten her. She abandoned me. I'll make her regret it, but I can't. Maybe I can't. In the underground meeting hall, Ikemura Jin and Tozun were stunned. They were analyzing his Zanpakuto ability when he whipped out someone else's Shirkai. What gives? As captains, they were knowledgeable. They could accept that Uehara Baiyu's Zanpakuto controlled spacetime, more powerful than Ryujin Jaka. Even so, they could devise a strategy to counter it, but he kept pulling out new abilities. He was slacking off, but improving faster than them. How do you defeat an enemy like that? Aizen was confused too. They knew he was impressive, but this was too much. The long-awaited surprise was almost a shock, but his eyes narrowed. He realized what was happening and nodded with a smile. Just being a Shinigami isn't enough for you anymore. You want to reach for the throne above the sky. Only with an opponent like you can the Hogyoku reach its full potential. Uehara Baiyu, I eagerly await your performance. Tozun Kaname relaxed and nodded. Uehara Baiyu is a formidable opponent. Luckily, Lord Aizen has located another piece of the Hogyoku, otherwise, he'd be impossible to deal with. The Hogyoku? That's not good. Ikemura Jin became more cautious. The world was beyond his understanding. He thought he was playing his cards close, but everyone else had something up their sleeves. He underestimated Aizen and Uehara Baiyu. He had to act before Aizen fully integrated the Hogyoku. Lord Aizen, should we retrieve the test subject? As Aizen's loyal Boyanjiang, Tozun Kaname wanted Aizen's possessions back. The hollow white was a valuable test subject. Even its corpse was worth studying. He wanted the remains of the hollow white, Aizen said. It's fine, it was defective. With a complete Hogyoku, we can make as many test subjects as we want. We just need to stay calm and push the plan forward. He was disappointed in the hollow. Even as a disposable tool, it wasn't up to par. It was worse than an Arrancar. It could beat an ordinary captain, but that's it. It was a failure. Aizen decided that Kurosaki Ichigo's power wasn't so easy to duplicate. Miracles are unique for a reason. They could try another plan. The ceiling barrier and surveillance signals around Naruki City vanished, and Uehara Baiyu reached out to help the injured Soifang. He didn't use the horse charm to heal her instantly, but he treated her carefully. It was treatment most people would never get. Feeling his burning hand, Soifang blushed and recoiled. What are you doing? You're hurt. Let me heal you. Uehara Baiyu wore a clear and innocent expression. Anyone who saw those eyes and thought he had bad intentions was heartless. Soifang gave in and let him, but she soon regretted it and said in a weak voice, "You're doing it wrong." "What do you mean?" "It's awesome. Let go. Be gentle." The Zanpakuto on Soifang's waist watched silently. Uehara Baiyu was showing Soifang how to use Soifang. While Uehara Baiyu was killing the mutated hollow, Ichigo Kurosaki and Yuryu Ishida were in danger. A massive black rift opened in the sky, small hollows flew toward it, some invisible force was drawing them in, a heavy spiritual pressure descended, revealing the terrifying entity. It had a clown-like face with a white bone mask and a long red nose. Under the amazed gaze of the two, it tore through the sky and came to Karakura town. This hollow was cloaked in black, its body so huge that it blotted out the sun. It was hundreds of feet tall, much larger than the surrounding buildings. Chapter 96. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The sheer size and terrifying spiritual pressure of this hollow made it clear this was no ordinary monster. With each step, the ground trembled, leaving massive craters in its wake. Completely oblivious, people just ran, gripped by panic. No way. It's a Jillian-class hollow. Those are supposed to be only for Royal Guard and Captain-level Soul Reapers. Rukia delivered her line with a hint of disbelief. The thing is, thanks to Uehara Shiraha's training, her combat skills rival the lieutenant's. If she still had her spiritual power, she could have taken this Jillian down, but since the textbooks at the Soul Reaper Academy hadn't been updated, she seriously underestimated it. Ishida Yuryu, overwhelmed by the pressure, exclaimed, "Impossible. This bait could never attract something this strong." He'd suspected something was up for a while. The number of hollows they'd been attracting lately was insane, and they were practically unkillable. Something felt really wrong. Now, with this thing showing up, there was no way the bait, even if it was potent, could still be working this well. He'd been so confident before, promising to wipe out all the hollows and restore the Quincy's honor, but what had he protected? Maybe he was better off as a doctor. After all, he was a pretty good tailor. He should be good at stitches. Meanwhile, Kurosaki Ichigo gripped his Zanpakuto, face grim. He wasn't overthinking it. No matter how big or strong the enemy was, he'd just cut it down. Farther off, Inoue Oriheim and Chad Sato watched the monster in shock. Due to the Hogyoku's influence and the constant hollow attacks, they'd started unlocking their hidden potential as Foolbringers. They were seeing a world ordinary people couldn't. Witnessing monstrous hollows and discovering Ichigo's secret, worried about Ichigo, they'd gone to Uehara, the store manager, to find out what was really going on. So, Uehara brought them here so they could see for themselves. Now, they stared, speechless, at the terrifying hollow. Was this even the same world they knew? Was this the kind of monster Ichigo had been fighting all this time? "This is the world your classmate, Ichigo Kurosaki, lives in," Uehara said, pulling his hat lower. "You need to think long and hard about whether or not you want to get involved. This is a big decision, one that will change your lives." He left one thing unsaid. It would change his life, too. Uehara hadn't expected Ichigo to go down this road. Between the disturbances in Naruki City, it was clear as day. Aizen was pulling the strings, targeting Ichigo and the Hogyoku's location. It seemed there was no way around it this time. War was coming, and he couldn't sit on the sidelines. Innocent people would get caught in the crossfire. Uehara felt guilty, but there was nothing he could do. Against an enemy like Aizen, he had to be ruthless. Sacrifices were inevitable. Back in the fight, Ichigo was already in trouble against the Jillian. He'd charged headfirst, Zanpakuto raised, but it was no use. His sword was fine against regular hollows, but it couldn't even scratch this thing. The Jillian just kicked him away like he was nothing. Getting to his feet, Ichigo looked pissed. And charged again. "Stop. You can't win like this." Ishida yelled, grabbing Ichigo's sword and pulling him back from his recklessness. As Ishida touched Ichigo's Zanpakuto, his body was flooded with spiritual energy. He felt stronger than he ever had before. This feeling of power was brand new to him. Ishida was confused. His classmate was even weirder than the hollow. After being reminded by Ishida, they both managed to ward off the hollow. Ichigo went on the offensive, while Ishida provided backup and put out fires for Ichigo with arrows of light. After releasing a fully charged Holy Extinction arrow, Ishida's hand was practically useless, so he was unable to fight at full strength for a short time. Fortunately, the final result was good. Uehara Shiraha wasn't paying attention to any of it. He had bigger fish to fry. if he could easily control Soi Fan when she was awake, this little bee in her confused state was no problem. And by the way, Uehara Shiraha also instructed her that you're doing this all wrong. You're not putting any power into it. Did you even eat anything? You're a whole night behind me. You still have a long way to go. This task is nothing for her. This pair of good sisters each had their own quirks, black and white, ice and fire. One was a passionate kitten, and the other an iceberg-like beauty, hee. Uehara Shiraha smirked like a classic villain. His confident and bossy personality, calm demeanor, and heroic presence gave him the presence of a true leader. At the same time, the system alerted him of a new special mission, Special Mission 15, obtain the complete Hogyoku. A magical weapon has its own spirit, and only those with virtue can possess it. Please, host, obtain the complete Hogyoku and restore its glory. Reward, random ability or item. Uehara Shiraha was thrilled. This was a double win, killing two birds with one stone. This mission was perfect timing. He'd already been planning on getting the complete Hogyoku. How convenient. And the system was right, it would be a waste for the Hogyoku to fall into the hands of Uehara and Aizen. Uehara wanted to maintain the balance and didn't want to get his hands dirty. To put it nicely, he's an idealist, but in reality, he's a fence-sitter, a straight-up idiot. He researched the Hogyoku, a treasure that could change the world, but he didn't dare to use it and only wanted to destroy it. Mirror flower blue dye could make full use of the Hogyoku. As for the big butterfly Aizen, he let himself get beaten to the point of breaking his own defenses and actively stopped evolving, turning the Hogyoku into trash. What a joke. Therefore, even if he didn't have this task, Uehara Shiraha would still get the Hogyoku. This thing was basically a mini wishing machine. If it was converted into a system reward, it would be at least SR level. Giving such a treasure to Aizen and others was such a waste. Only a virtuous man like him was worthy of it. As for the difficulty of the task, there wasn't any. When he just crossed over, it would have been difficult for Uehara Shiraha to get the Hogyoku. Now, as long as he followed the plot, he could easily complete the task. Uehara and Aizen fought countless open and secret battles for the Hogyoku, and in the end, Aizen obtained the complete Hogyoku. At the beginning, the complete Hogyoku was in a dormant state, and it took time and resources to fully wake it up. As before, Uehara Shiraha's main goal was to sit back and reap the rewards. He just had to wait until the final harvest. Aizen's hard work was going to turn into someone else's. Uehara guessed his face would be great to see. Of course, since it was related to special missions, Uehara Shiraha also needed to do some prep work. However, someone else could take care of those tasks. Those are the benefits of having power. He just needed to enjoy it, and people would do the work without him even giving the order. Uehara Shiraha's original goal in establishing the court guard was to better enjoy life and complete tasks. Justice, peace, and changing the world had nothing to do with the court guard. The only thing the hundreds of people in the court guard had to do was please him and serve him. Michi Hain in the base understood this the most. Just like now, without Uehara Shiraha's orders, Michi Hain came in and busied herself dressing him, feeding him, and massaging his shoulders and back. She did it all with a smile on her face, and her brown eyes sparkled with joy. She was wearing a black and white maid outfit that Uehara Shiraha liked very much. Her graceful and full body perfectly showed off her curves. The maid outfit, which was already revealing, looked even more informal and tempting on her body. Which cadre could withstand such a test? The clothes had gone on in vain. After finishing his work, he brought Michi Hain, whose face was flushed, to the small laboratory at the base. There was very advanced technical equipment here, basically sponsored by Uehara. Over the years, Uehara Shiraha had been sticking to the principle of never taking advantage of others, and he almost took advantage of that poor bald store manager. At this time, he was messing with the remains of yesterday's mutated hollow under Michi Hain's curious gaze. Uehara Shiraha was still interested in this mutated hollow that mimicked Ichigo Kurosaki's power. Although he didn't know much about the equipment, he had the ability to see through everything and predict the future. When the proficiency of observation haki reached perfection, he unlocked the ability to hear the sound of all things. However, Roger's hearing the sound of all things focuses on communication and the pursuit of understanding between people. Uehara Shiraha's ability focused on insight. He could see through the future and capture all the weaknesses of the enemy. It was a perfect combat ability. He called it insight into everything. at this time, with the blessing of the perfect observation haki, his eyes turned into the deep and vast universe. They seemed to contain infinite mysteries and could see through anything. Michi Hain was fascinated by Uehara Shiraha's deep and charming eyes. In the extraordinary world, power was charm, compared with looks and figures. The attraction of absolute power was more deadly and long-lasting. After a long time, Uehara Shiraha shook his head and retracted his gaze, looking disappointed. Sir, why is this hollow so strange? Du Yugen's strength wasn't weak, therefore, she could tell that the hollow in front of her was very strange. And ordinary hollows couldn't attract Uehara Shiraha's attention. This is indeed not an ordinary hollow. Uehara Shiraha wasn't interested in the remains anymore. But it's nothing special, it's just a poor imitation and a failure. It's even less valuable than I thought. All the power in Bleach was extremely idealistic. Great power plus a special soul was truly invincible. The same hollow power, the same Shinigami power, the same Quincy power, resulted in drastically different levels of strength based on their spirit and consciousness. Ichigo Kurosaki was so powerful not just because he had a unique bloodline, but because he was Ichigo Kurosaki. The same 4.2 bloodline wouldn't make others as invincible. For example, the mutant hollow in front of him was very weak. Even though it copied Ichigo's bloodline, even though Yhwach absorbed Ichigo Kurosaki's power in the Thousand-Year Blood War, he still couldn't use the Crescent Moon Sky Strike, which had the highest offensive power in the three realms, unless they had the Mind Stone and infinite swordsmanship like Uehara Shiraha. Otherwise, these people would never be able to perfectly copy Ichigo's power. The only one who could was Uehara Shiraha. So let's start with a small goal. Surpass the Soul King Yhwach and achieve omniscience and omnipotence. After that he could surpass Ichigo's double-bladed power to achieve maximum attack power. After returning to Soul Society, Uehara Shiraha received an order from Central 46, some said it was a reward. The Commander-in-Chief of the Imperial Army, Shiroha Uehara, has made great contributions to the Suriidai, has outstanding leadership skills, and the Imperial Army has strict discipline. From now on, the Imperial Army will replace the 6th Division and the Defense Force in protecting Noble Street. The order didn't seem like much to ordinary Soul Reapers, but senior officials were shocked. 8th Division Captain Shunsui Kairaku and 6th Division Captain Byakuya Kachiki were especially surprised. Shunsui Kairaku muttered to himself in his office, looking puzzled. The Tsuneyashiro family knows I'm close with Brother Baiyu, so why would they agree to this order? And even if they did agree, Tsuneyashiro Tokunada would stir up trouble. Why would they issue such an outrageous order? Do they want to win over Brother Baiyu? Chapter 97. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Those guys are nuts, he muttered. If even the old coot Yamamoto couldn't get one over on Baiyu, what makes them think they can? They're practically begging for a dirt nap. Suddenly feeling much better, he decided to sneak out and grab a drink with Baiyu to celebrate. Screw the work, it could wait, or better yet, not get done at all. Meanwhile, Byakuya Kachiki's face was a mask of inner turmoil. The 6th Division, as a noble squad, has always been the guardian of Noble Street, so how did the 46th Division issue an order like this without my knowing? That he felt a pang of guilt. The Kachiki family was supposed to be the voice of the nobility, the upholders of their traditions, yet, as the family head, he'd broken the rules himself by marrying a commoner from the Rukongai district. Then, he'd bent the rules again to honor his deceased wife's last wish by adopting Rukia, another Rukongai orphan. He'd always felt like he was letting his family down, tarnishing the 6th Division's reputation. That's why Byakuya vowed to never break the rules again, to never make exceptions for anyone. Now, his authority was being usurped by the Central 46, but Byakuya wasn't angry, just filled with self-reproach and guilt. Yamamoto Genryosai Shigekuni, the captain of the 1st Division, barely registered the order, his eyes remaining closed in disdain. The idea of a hyena bribing a dragon is laughable, he scoffed. Sir, if you knew all along, why let them gain ground? Chojiro Sasakaibe, his lieutenant, was clearly confused. He'd always assumed Yamamoto was on the side of the nobles. After all, the Godai 13 had received a lot of support from them in its early days. The Shihoin and Kachiki families, 2 of the 5 great noble houses, had been instrumental in integrating the Godai 13. That kind of bond was hard to break. But Uehara Baiyu was different. He saw the nobles as disposable trash. From a strategic point of view, shouldn't they be trying to contain someone like that, if not outright suppress him? Over the years, the Gotei 13 had become too intertwined with the nobles, they were practically inseparable. A radical new captain could upset that delicate balance. Yamamoto shook his head. Chojiro, some people can't be held back. You mastered Bankai in a month, but Uehara Baiyu shines even brighter than we do. It's my responsibility to put the Gotei 13 in his hands. Maintaining balance and order was his primary concern as the current captain commander. What came next was for the new captain to figure out. In the end, strength was all that mattered. With strength, you could maintain balance. Without it, who cared about being polite to the nobles? His job was to choose the right captain, and no one was better suited than Uehara Baiyu. If Uehara Baiyu could read their minds, he'd be laughing. You've all been played by that old fox Aizen. He was a master manipulator, good at messing with people's heads. Aizen's order had multiple layers. The first was to butter him up, to keep him happy. The second was a warning and a test. He knew Baiyu had been stirring things up in Noble Street under the guise of Otsutsuki Naruto. Aizen's order was a way of saying he knew everything, a flexing of power. He was also trying to gauge Baiyu's intentions. And then there was the final layer, which was particularly insidious. Aizen knew he'd soon be defecting from the Gotei 13, leaving a mess behind. Anyone who got too close to him would be in for a world of hurt. The Central 46 might think they were riding high now, but when Aizen's treachery came to light, they'd have to pay up big time. The Tsuneyashiro family, who would be on the hook, would be out for blood. Aizen was trying to use him as a pawn in a power play, setting him up to fight the Tsuneyashiro family. The privilege was a poisoned apple, tempting but deadly. Baiyu scoffed inwardly. You're not going to use me that easily. I'll take the benefit, but you can keep the poison. His superior strength and foresight gave him an edge. The mission system's rewards had already made him practically unbeatable. Coupled with his knowledge of the future, Baiyu could easily maximize his gains. Aizen and Uehara Kisuke could scheme and plot all they wanted. He'd come out on top. He saw them as tools, the best kind, the ones that didn't need a salary and knew how to get things done. His new special mission hinged on them. He could never have too many capable, unpaid tools. As for Noble Street, if the nobles were planning to turn on him, he'd strike first. Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu was strong, but his Dankong was nothing to sneeze at. Baiyu was itching to see the dead rebel. The Tsuneyashiro family might be at the height of their power, but their wealth came from the destruction of countless lesser noble houses. If you want to bring them down, you have to make them lose it first. Besides, Baiyu was holding a trump card. The seemingly powerful Tsuneyashiro family was nothing but a bunch of dinosaurs. Back in the 5th Division barracks, Aizen politely dismissed Hinamori Momo. Ikemara Jin appeared, watching Momo leave with a sigh. She's a useful piece, isn't she? You're more terrifying than Kyoka Suigetsu, Aizen. I don't have as much control over her as I'd like, Aizen admitted. If she were a blank slate, I could paint whatever I wanted on it, but someone's already left their mark. I didn't want to waste too much time. Jin frowned. Is this about Uehara Baiyu again? Are you sure he won't mess with our plans? This is a crucial time. Jin, don't worry. I've already sent the gift. Aizen glanced towards Noble Street, a confident smirk playing on his lips. Now and in the future, Uehara Baiyu is no longer a threat to us. If he wants to stay in the Soul Society, he'd better watch his back. The nobles will be after him. Noble Street is not for the faint of heart. What was a strong man without a foundation, without conviction? My old friend isn't the type to compromise. Who do you think will win, him or those nobles? Jin asked, sounding intrigued. He wanted to learn more, particularly about the 5 great noble houses and Squad Zero, which even he, as a captain, knew little about. He had to understand Aizen's plan completely to strike the killing blow. I'm curious myself. I'd love to see that showdown, Aizen said, a mysterious smile on his face. The Tsuneyashiro family might be corrupt, but they still had resources, plus, they were connected to Squad Zero. Aizen was eager to see if Baiyu would force them to reveal their hand, but he doubted it would happen. Because of Squad Zero's mystique and the power of the 5 great noble houses, Baiyu wouldn't dare to kill the Tsuneyashiro family. Meanwhile, back in the Siriidi's pleasure district, Baiyu was drinking with Kairaku Shunsui, surrounded by beautiful women. Kairaku might be a major financial backer of the pleasure district, but the ladies were flocking to Baiyu, ignoring his rank and position. His irresistible charm was enough to make them swoon. The lights twinkled, glasses clinked, and talent and beauty mingled. Kairaku, watching Baiyu get younger and more handsome every day, suddenly felt like a side character. It wasn't that he was bad, but compared to Baiyu, he paled in comparison. Talented, powerful, charming, and handsome, he couldn't even dream of being that good. And then there was the rumor, the courtesans come and go, but Baiyu remains. Thinking of Baiyu's legendary stamina, Kairaku was envious. You're really gifted, brother Baiyu. Any tips for keeping up with so many women? That he understood the struggles of middle age, and these pleasure district fairies were too good at what they did. Even an 8th division captain couldn't keep up. He had to drink early every time just to survive. It was beyond his capabilities. He wanted to outlast 10 women at once. It's innate. You can't learn it. Baiyu didn't even look at him, just enjoying the attention of the women. For a stand user, minor injuries were irrelevant. Taking on 10 fairies was easy. The women around Baiyu giggled, their eyes sparkling. The warm, luxurious room was filled with laughter. Kairaku's face flushed, and he took a big gulp of wine. Happiness was for others, pain was for him. He shouldn't have brought it up. He was just embarrassing himself. After eating and drinking, Baiyu and Kairaku moved to a more private room to talk about Noble Street. So, are you confident about Noble Street? Kairaku's expression turned serious. He knew what Noble Street meant. It was the power center of the Soul Society. The people and organizations there enjoyed the greatest privileges and support. Establishing a presence there would be a major victory for the Imperial Army. Uehara Baiyu's faction would have the resources to grow even stronger. The fact that such a huge opportunity had fallen into Baiyu's lap made him suspect foul play, but the potential payoff was too big to ignore. Baiyu remained calm. What's going to happen? Why would I turn down free money? That he'd already assigned the Imperial Army to handle the defense and daily operations of Noble Street. He practically held the lives of the nobles in his hands. The benefits were considerable. The Imperial Army was practically gorging itself. Luckily, he had a huge appetite and could swallow it all. There was no chance of any side effects. Kairaku was still worried. They might not care about anything else, but they'll cling to power. Are you sure you're okay? That he was also curious. Most of the nobles thought they were above the Imperial Army, but why were the 4 great noble houses allowing them to move in? The Imperial Army's arrival would diminish their power, yet they tolerated it. The whole thing felt too easy. It felt unreal. Of course they're not happy, but does that matter? Baiyu knew the situation was delicate. The Tsuneyashiro family was distracted by the Central 46S order and was waiting to see what happened next while dealing with internal problems. The Kachiki and Shihoin families were on his side, so they wouldn't say much. Seeing Baiyu's confidence, Kairaku relaxed and raised his glass with a smile. If you control the Imperial Army and the Godai 13, you control the entire Soul Society. Even the old man Yamamoto never had this much power. Let's drink to a brighter future. That he couldn't stand the nobles and didn't want to give up on the Godai 13, but he didn't want to work too hard. The sudden rise of Uehara Baiyu and the Imperial Army was the best thing that could have happened to him. You're just trying to pass the buck. Baiyu didn't want the captain commander's position. Not only were the Godai 13 captains all problem children, but he'd be busy with all the big and small issues. He'd created the Imperial Army to enjoy a more leisurely life. Once the Imperial Army completely controlled Noble Street, he, as its commander-in-chief, would be even more respected than the captain commander of the Godai 13. Maybe the captain commander of the Godai 13 would have to take orders from him. The position of captain commander was a burden. Baiyu would be a fool to take it. Wouldn't it be better to be the guy ordering the captain commander around? The next evening, Baiyu returned to the underground base at Sokayaku Hill to meet Yoruchi Shihoin. The purple-haired, dark-skinned beauty was particularly enthusiastic. Her eyes sparkled when she looked at him. Baiyu, thank you for saving Soi Fan. Yoruchi already knew about the incident in Naruki City. She thought it was Aizen's revenge. If Baiyu hadn't intervened, Soi Fan might have been seriously hurt. She felt like she'd put Soi Fan in danger. That Aizen was a snake. She should be thanking me. Baiyu smirked inwardly. Although he was responsible for Soi Fan's brush with death, he'd also saved her. She owed him one, and Soy Fan had already thanked him handsomely. Baiyu, a man of refined taste, said righteously. You're too kind, it was my duty, but I think you should show me your sincere gratitude. Is this sincere enough? Yoruchi let down her hair and took off her shirt. Baiyu's eyes were serious. Not enough. How about this? Perfect. Finally, Yoruchi put herself in the situation with ease. This time, she was more proactive and passionate than before. She was genuinely grateful to Baiyu for saving Soy Fan, but she also had other motives. Half a day later, they were back in the hot spring, enjoying the familiar warmth. Baiyu drifted off for a relaxing nap, a blissful look on his face. Soaking in the hot spring after a workout was heaven. The troubles of the world were far away. Yoruchi looked at him, carefree and relaxed, and felt envious. He lived his life to the fullest, drinking and surrounded by beautiful women. As the former captain of the 2nd Division, commander of the Onmitsukido, and head of the Shihoin family, she'd never had it so good. She was constantly worried and couldn't even go home. Chapter 98. You are listening at novelfull.audio. They call it living, but it's more like just surviving. I honestly don't know what they're fighting so hard for. Uehara Baiyu drawled, just spit it out already. Spurred by Uehara Baiyu's words, Shifenjuan Yoruchi jumped right in. Aizen's about to make his move. Got any bright ideas? Not really. I'm focused on Noble Street right now. Uehara Baiyu smiled faintly. I don't give a damn about the Central 46S orders, but Aizen's a real threat. Believe it or not, the second I leave Noble Street, he'll be there causing chaos. You wouldn't want anything to happen to your sweet little brother, would you? The Central 46 had recently issued an order. Since the court guard squads were new to the area, they weren't familiar with Noble Street's barrier system. To protect the nobles, the head of the court guard squads had to stay put in Noble Street for the foreseeable future. It seemed Aizen wanted to keep him pinned down there. Uehara Shiraha wasn't particularly bothered. He had plenty of ways to slip out of Noble Street unnoticed, but he was too lazy to get involved unless there was something in it for him. If there wasn't a benefit, he'd just sit back, watch the drama unfold, and enjoy the show. I know you've got something up your sleeve, but are you sure you can handle Aizen now that he's got the Hogyoku? This isn't just a fight anymore, it's a full-blown war. Are you positive nothing's going to mess with your plan? Shifenjuan Yoruchi still thought it was safer to team up and nip it in the bud. Uehara Shiraha relaxed in the hot spring water and replied casually, it's dangerous for you, but for me? The bigger the storm, the bigger the payday. Yoichi Shirfone raised an eyebrow. Think about it. Aizen's not that simple. Aizen was a handful even 100 years ago, forcing them into hiding, afraid to return to Soul Society. Now he was at full power, with countless tricks up his sleeve. Frankly, they weren't confident they could win. They were just going along because they had no other choice. Feeling the perfect pressure behind him, Uehara Shiraha decided to drop a hint. Aizen's definitely not simple. You're only captain level because that's all your talent allows. Aizen's only captain level because that's the upper limit for Soul Reapers. For me, captain level's just the starting point. You better be right. Shifenjuan Yoruchi wasn't as easily fooled as Soifang, but she couldn't deny it stirred something within her. After he was finished relaxing, Uehara Shiraha completed his daily, deep relaxation, task, spiritual pressure +1, flash step +1. Silently, his power grew a little stronger. He could feel himself steadily transforming into a transcendent. Aizen was doing all this to become a transcendent, a higher plane in hopes of breaking the limits. Meanwhile, for him, it was just a natural progression. He didn't need to do anything special. He just had to keep stacking, day by day, and he'd naturally become stronger than anyone else. This task system was way better than the complete Hogyoku or the Soul King's power. Even without special missions, he could become invincible just by doing his daily tasks. It would be a bit slower, but safer, and he could get stronger by doing next to nothing. That was way better than Aizen and the others risking their lives. As he was thinking this, Uehara Shiraha sensed two familiar figures leaving the Soul Society. He thought, looks like Rukia's secret's out. My troublesome little apprentice is going back to Soul Society for execution. Aizen will be strung up soon enough. This calls for a celebration. To celebrate, let's mess with the Tsunishiro family for added fun, asterisk. As dusk fell, on the streets of Karakura town, a flash of white light heralded the arrival of an ancient portal. The captain of the 6th Division, Byakuya Kachiki, and his lieutenant, Renji Abarai, stepped out. They were here to arrest Rukia Kachiki. She had committed a grave crime by passing her Soul Reaper powers to a human. The Central 46 had ordered the 13th Division to bring her back for questioning. At the captain's meeting, Byakuya Kachiki had requested to lead the mission himself. His reason was simple: the 6th Division wasn't needed at Noble Street, so they were free. It was a perfectly reasonable explanation. Kyoraku Shunsui was the first to agree. Nobody there was stupid. They knew what Byakuya Kachiki was thinking. Several of the captains realized that he was saving Rukia. Any other captain might not show mercy, and Rukia might be hurt. Most of the captains, including the captain commander, were willing to let Byakuya Kachiki go to the human world and bring Rukia Kachiki back safely. Aizen and the others wanted to obtain the Hogyoku. After all, if Rukia died, the Hogyoku inside her would disappear. Kyoraku Shunsui and the other captains. We're doing it for Uehara Shiraha. Rukia was his student, and nothing could happen to her. Soon, on an empty street, Byakuya Kachiki and Abarai Renji confronted Rukia Kachiki, looking at her childhood friend, now a stranger, and her older brother with his cold face. Rukia Kachiki was a nervous wreck. She was prepared to take responsibility for everything. Passing on the power of a Soul Reaper to a human was a serious crime, and humans who obtained Soul Reaper powers were also unforgivable. To protect that dumb kid, Rukia had cut ties with Ichigo Kurosaki. Seeing Rukia so fragile, Abarai Renji said with disappointment, "You've become a member of the Kachiki family, and you've been favored by that man. Why have you fallen so far? And to have your Soul Reaper powers taken by a human. Are you worthy of the Kachiki family's training? Are you worthy of Lord Uehara's guidance?" His tone was arrogant, praising the Kachiki family and Uehara Shiraha. But in truth, he was trying to wake Rukia up. If she blamed the human who'd gained her Soul Reaper powers, and with the support of Commander Uehara and Captain Kachiki, her punishment wouldn't be too severe. So, as far as he was concerned, all Rukia Kachiki had to do was turn in the human, apologize to Captain Kachiki, and beg for forgiveness. To protect Ichigo Kurosaki, Rukia stubbornly refused. "Even though I've lost most of my powers and I'm wearing a temporary body, that doesn't mean my powers were taken by a human." She wasn't willing to sacrifice innocent people to save herself. No matter what, she wouldn't betray Kurosaki Ichigo. Even though your life doesn't belong to you anymore, you're still trying to protect a mere human. I'm so disappointed. Abarai Renji resorted to threats to force Rukia down the right path. He swung his Zanpakuto at her. However, it was all bark and no bite, lots of flashy effects, but zero damage. He was just trying to scare her. Putting aside their friendship, he wouldn't dare hit her too hard, not with Captain Kachiki and General Uehara watching. Byakuya Kachiki watched the whole thing with a blank expression, never changing at all. Even when he found out a Quincy had come to her rescue, his expression never faltered. Seeing Ishida Yuryu fire a holy arrow, Abarai Renji was surprised. "Who are you?" "A Soul Reaper protects humans, and a human helps a Soul Reaper." Is the world that crazy? That he was sure the guy wasn't using Soul Reaper powers, but he couldn't figure out who Ishida was. Ishida Yuryu's words nearly broke Abarai Renji. Unfortunately, Ishida's aim was not as sharp as his tongue, and he was knocked to the ground by Abarai Renji after a few blows. Ishida Yuryu's strength wasn't actually that weak, but, to relieve pressure for Kurosaki Ichigo, his right hand was pushed too far and seriously injured. Therefore, he was weak. Just as Abarai Renji was taunting Ishida Yuryu, a terrifying spiritual pressure came and forced Abarai Renji to retreat. An orange-haired boy appeared, wielding a giant Zanpakuto. Kurosaki Ichigo was here. Looking at the strange Soul Reaper wearing a Soul Reaper uniform and holding a Zanpakuto, Abarai Renji wondered, "Which division are you from? Tell me your name. And why is your Zanpakuto so big? I didn't know it was this big." Ichigo Kurosaki blocked Ishida Yuryu behind him and asked, "What's a division? What are you talking about?" "Oh, by the way, my name is Ichigo Kurosaki, and I'm about to kick your ass." Nice to meet you. Abarai Renji's head nearly exploded. First of all, this guy actually dared to provoke him. Second, it was obvious this was the human who took Rukia's Soul Reaper powers, unforgivable. Abarai Renji immediately slashed at Kurosaki Ichigo. He had become the lieutenant of the prestigious 6th Division as a civilian because of his outstanding skills. After slashing at Kurosaki Ichigo, he felt like he did 0 damage. Even after he was boasting, he was slashed by the opponent. Abarai Renji was furious. How could he be injured by a human, a half-baked Soul Reaper? This was so embarrassing. Byakuya Kachiki couldn't take it anymore and said, Abarai Renji, you're being too careless. Captain, Abarai Renji wasn't buying it. He didn't think he needed to take this guy seriously. Kachiki Byakuya said coldly, the special forces sent a report that someone had stopped a hollow from invading Karakura town a few days ago. Now that I think about it, it must have been him. Captain, I don't believe that he can defeat a hollow. Abarai Renji argued, just look at his Zanpakuto. It's only big. It's useless. He is not even an amateur, how could he possibly beat the hollow? After saying that, he said to Kurosaki Ichigo, hey, kid, you do not even know your Zanpakuto's name, right? Kurosaki Ichigo asked confusedly, what? Zanpakuto have names? What's that supposed to mean? Assuming that he had one, Abarai Renji used the Shirkai Snake Tail Ball. Red hair, powerful spiritual pressure, and amazing momentum, he was like a Super Saiyan swinging the Snake Tail Ball, and every strike was deadly. Facing the Shirkai Snake Tail Ball, Ichigo retreated step by step and fell to the ground injured. The subsequent plot developed as expected. When Abarai Renji was feeling proud, Ichigo unleashed spiritual pressure and knocked the opponent down. Then, Kachiki Byakuya broke Ichigo's Zanpakuto with one hand, and used Shuinpa to defeat Ichigo. Kurosaki. Ichigo didn't master Shuinpa, and he had no power to resist Flash Flower. In the first encounter, Byakuya Kachiki showed what a Soul Reaper captain was. That was the most composed scene of Dabai. He reached his peak when he debuted. Then Dabai suffered setbacks and got beaten all the time, especially during the 1000-Year Blood War, when he was almost killed. Uehara Shiraha watched Kachiki Byakuya and Abarai Renji bring back Rukia. Kurosaki Ichigo, whose lock knot and soul sleep were destroyed, could only lay on the ground with his eyes closed and wait for death. The high school student with orange hair looked desperate and helpless. He felt weak, pitiful and helpless. It was strange. Uehara Shiraha sensed that 3 people were secretly observing the helpless high school student with perverted eyes. Kyobaku was ready to move, and Zangetsu was thoughtful. Kurosaki Ichigo wouldn't die. When Uehara arrived to pick up the body, Uehara Shiraha retracted his gaze. A wonderful drama was about to be staged, but the busyness was theirs, and the excitement and happiness were his. First, he would let them work hard for him. While he had some free time, he was going to find some fun and make some money. With that in mind, Uehara Shiraha ignored what was happening and put on camouflage glasses. He arrived at Tsuneyashiro Tokunada's mansion. Because his sentence had expired, Tsuneyashiro Tokunada was considered the return of the Dragon King and had gained freedom. However, his life was not easy because of the orders. Originally, the nobles thought the imperial army was a joke. After all, Rukongai and Hueco Mundo were garbage dumps in their eyes. Nobody cared about the standards for the imperial army. Who would have thought that the imperial army would be the manager of Noble Street? The nobles thought it was a farce. With the Tsuneyashiro family and the Kachiki family, Uehara Shiraha and the imperial army would never be able to set foot in Noble Street. However, the Tsuneyashiro family allowed the imperial army to take over the defense of Noble Street. They were angry and confused by this. Why did the Tsuneyashiro family become cowardly? And Byakuya Kachiki? People were on your neck, and you do not even say a word. The Tsuneyashiro family did not know why their sages had issued such outrageous orders. Uehara Shiraha had rejected their proposals. Since he did not want to be their dog, he was their enemy. Moreover, he had a close relationship with Kairaku Shunsui. Kairaku Shunsui had caused them a lot of trouble. Therefore, the Tsuneyashiro family regarded Uehara Shiraha as a threat. They were going to deal with the other party, but their sages had invited him to their home. That was outrageous. When hearing this order, Tsuneyashiro Tokikuwa was dumbfounded. Chapter 99. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Was Uehara Hakuba your old man? You're helping those guys, thinking I, the head of the family, am 6 feet under. Something's rotten in this family, dig into it. Tokunada Tsunoyashiro was floored when he found out major resources and funds had mysteriously landed in the Imperial Army's lap, and every lead pointed straight back to him, so, Tokunada Tsunoyashiro, fresh out of prison, nearly got slapped with a life sentence. Desperate, he doubled down, claiming it was all part of his grand scheme. Everything was under control, of course. That didn't fool him or the family elders for a second. He was just stalling for time. He decided to force a showdown, so, the second he saw this Otsutsuki Naruto coming his way, Tokunada Tsunoyashiro blurted out. I've done everything you asked. Time to hold up your end of the bargain, right? That they'd had this conversation a million times before. Every time, he'd get the runaround, but not this time. He had a lot to get off his chest. After years of playing puppet, he was ready to finally cash in, at the very least to vent his frustrations. Besides, he'd figured out who this guy really was, while he was mentally prepping for a major blow-up. Uehara Baiyu just nodded and said. All right. Here's the Yenluo Mirror Classic you wanted. Catch. He pulled the artifact from thin air and tossed it over. Tokunada Tsunoyashiro was dumbstruck. Why couldn't this guy just stick to the script? This. He instinctively reached out and grabbed the weapon. A jolt of recognition shot through him. This was the ancient family heirloom. The real Yenluo Mirror Classic. Not a fake. He had to swallow all the angry words bubbling inside, practically choking on them. The artifact he'd been dreaming of was finally in his hands, and he felt like crying. He'd sacrificed so much for this was too much. The sudden surprise actually moved him a little. He shook his head, indignant. Why am I feeling so emotional? This guy just returned something that was mine to begin with. This isn't over yet. As if reading his mind, Uehara Shiraha said patiently. I was just testing you. Congrats, you passed. I'll remember your hard work and dedication. Tokunada Tsunoyashiro, clutching the Yenluo Mirror Classic, forced a smile. Oh, really? I'm honored. Yeah right, he thought. Are you trying to pull the wool over my eyes? Even a moron wouldn't fall for this. If you said one honest thing, I'd eat this thing. Your biggest mistake was handing it over. You'll regret this, seeing the growing arrogance plastered across Tokunada Tsunoyashiro's face. Uehara Baiyu had a pretty good idea of what he was thinking. He'd always known Tokunada Tsunoyashiro was an ungrateful snake you could never tame. Sure, he'd worked hard for the money, but he'd also gotten a chance to level up and chase his ambitions. Most people would kill for that kind of opportunity. But this guy couldn't even manage a thank you. Talk about a spoiled brat. If he'd known he was dealing with such a greedy jerk, he would have made the promises smaller. What a waste. But Uehara Baiyu played the part of a gracious boss. He magnanimously shrugged off the rudeness and simply nodded. Now that you have the artifact, we can get started on the plan. He knew exactly what Tsunoyashiro Tokunada was cooking up. It was pretty crude and reckless. Tokunada Tsunoyashiro wasn't exactly playing with a full deck, barely smarter than an old mountain man. As a villain, his IQ was seriously lacking. No wonder Aizen and the others looked down on him. Don't need to tell me twice, I'm already on it. With the weapon in his grasp, Tokunada Tsunoyashiro spoke with newfound confidence, but he was still rattled. This bastard really knows what I'm planning. He hadn't let anyone in on the details, just laid the groundwork. How did this Otsutsuki Naruto know his plan? Why did he seem to know everything? Whatever. The plan was foolproof. Once he controlled the Tsunoyashiro family and swayed the old nobles, he could squeeze the Zero Squad for all they were worth. Then anyone who crossed him would pay the ultimate price. Uehara Baiyu nodded. Water under the bridge. Learn from the past, focus on what's ahead. When you take control of the Tsunoyashiro family, we'll have plenty of chances to work together. I'll be waiting. A cold glint flashed in Tokunada Tsunoyashiro's eyes. I might need your help then. They set a date, and Uehara Baiyu turned and left, leaving him alone. He stared at the Yenluo Mirror Classic in his hand, a smug smile creeping across his face. The smile morphed into a crazed grin. Oh ha ha ha. I finally have it. Tokunada Tsuneyashiro felt like every hardship had been worth it. Soon, that hateful guy would feel all the pain he had caused. His confidence came from the artifact. The moment he touched it, he instinctively understood its powers and how to wield them. With this weapon, everything would fall into place. The Tsuneyashiro family, Kairaku Shunsui, Otsutsuki Naruto, no one would escape his wrath. The guilty must be punished. This world is guilty. He would wipe away all the sin. Uehara Shiraha was well aware of Tokunada Tsuneyashiro's thoughts and plans. The villain's arrogance always swelled when things went his way, but he was destined to fail. He had a powerful artifact, sure, but all he could destroy was the Tsuneyashiro family. From start to finish, this guy was a joke, a clown. Uehara Shiraha had already made arrangements for him and the family. A few days later, the 46th chamber delivered their verdict on Rukia. The defendant, Rukia Kuchiki, is hereby sentenced to death for committing a first-degree felony. She will be executed by double execution in 25 days at Maou execution ground. That the order sent shockwaves through the Soul Society. Most Shinigami never expected such a harsh sentence. Rukia was the adopted daughter of the Kuchiki family, one of the 4 noble houses, practically a princess. She hadn't committed an unforgivable crime, simply passed on Shinigami powers to a human. For ordinary Shinigami, that wasn't a capital offense, especially not for a Kuchiki. The captains, vice-captains, and senior officers of the Godei 13 were baffled by the execution order. The 46th chamber's reputation had been tanking lately. They found it strange how they didn't show favor to the nobles, but even Captain Yamamoto and Byakuya Kuchiki didn't question it, so no one else dared to either. Everyone knew that the commander-in-chief of the court guard, Shiraha Uehara, was protective of Rukia. With his rebellious streak, he wouldn't just stand by and do nothing, would he? But Shiraha Uehara remained silent. He'd been diligently guarding Noble Street, a picture of a loyal servant. Some captains even started to think the nobles had finally tamed him. They were disheartened. Kairaku Shunsui didn't believe Uehara Shiraha would be intimidated by the nobles or bought off by those creeps. He marched right up to Uehara Shiraha and cut to the chase. What do you make of this verdict? You don't actually agree with this nonsense, do you? This has to be Tsuneyashiro Tokunada's doing. He sensed something was off. The seemingly calm Soul Society was a powder keg, filled with the sense that a storm was coming. The 46 chambers' eagerness to execute Rukia seemed over the top. They must have had an ulterior motive. Kairaku Shunsui knew Tsuneyashiro Tokunada was free and that the Tsuneyashiro family had influence over the 4 warriors and 6 chambers. It was highly likely he was behind it. The guy was definitely up to something. I'd love to help, but I can't leave. Uehara Baiyu spread his hands, feigning helplessness, in a fancy house on Noble Street. The 46th chamber's given me direct orders to stay put. Can't exactly go against them, can I? It wasn't impossible, but it was too much hassle and wouldn't maximize his gains. Could all those orders have been just to keep you on Noble Street? That's a bit much, isn't it? Are they crazy? Kairaku Shunsui finally realized how serious the situation was. Tsuneyashiro Tokunada's plan was even more twisted and insane than he'd imagined. This guy was harder to deal with than before. His time in prison wasn't wasted. He must have spent the last 100 years plotting evil, bad. Baiyu and Rukia were in danger. Kairaku Shunsui gave Uehara Baiyu a serious look, wanting to talk him into action, but Uehara Baiyu was casually enjoying the food, wine, and attention from the beautiful maids. He clearly didn't give a damn about the 46th chamber's orders. Kairaku Shunsui suddenly said. I was overthinking things. Seems you've already got it figured out. You're not doing anything because you don't need to be. No one's executing my student, Uehara Baiyu. There's no need to rush. Uehara Baiyu drawled lazily. Rukia's still too green. This is a chance for her to grow and learn. Maybe she'll find enlightenment in Ryuba. Ise Nanao was the most capable and obedient of his 3 students. Hinamori Momo and Rukia were full of energy, but that meant they had their own ideas. Time to teach them a lesson about the real world. As a teacher, he was genuinely looking out for their development. Kairaku Shunsui relaxed, picking up his wine glass. His tone went back to its usual lazy cadence. Good to know you have a plan. Don't worry, you're not alone. My old pal will help out for sure. Rukia's under his command. after all. I'll pitch in, too, that he would do everything he could, it would take some of the weight off Uehara Baiyu and Fuju. Lord Aizen, everything's going as you predicted. Shiroha Uehara hasn't left Noble Street. Tozen left the underground council hall and arrived at the 5th Division barracks. Ikemura Jinyo had taken over camouflage work there. Tozen was wary of Shiroha Uehara, he saw him as an even bigger threat than Yamamoto Genryosai Shigekuni. The captain was old and had lost his ambition, Shiroha Uehara was full of energy and shrouded in mystery. He knew everything and was incredibly powerful, that made him a danger to their plans. He'd been gathering intel through secret mobile forces. Shiroha Uehara had spent the last few days on Noble Street, eating, drinking, and having a good time. He hadn't even acknowledged the execution order. Tozen figured it was all part of Aizen's plan. Interesting. Aizen smirked. Don't you think this is all a bit too easy? That everything was unfolding as he expected, but it wasn't quite what he had in mind. He'd expected Uehara Baiyu to defy orders. Aizen predicted that he would intervene as soon as Rukia brought the Hogyoku back to the Soul Society. He couldn't be indifferent to the Hogyoku, could he? He had meticulously planned a series of countermeasures to deal with him, but he was just shadowboxing, while the other guys stayed put. But the change made Aizen even happier. Tozen was stunned, then lowered his head. You're right, Lord Aizen. I was careless. So, Uehara Shiroha is plotting something else, biding his time. That he admitted he'd been short-sighted. How could someone like Uehara Shiroha be so easy to deal with? His obedience was a front, and he probably had something sinister planned in secret. Rather than keeping it to himself, he's probably confident he's already won, so he doesn't need to do anything. Aizen was curious about why Uehara Baiyu was so confident. He had backup plans, so he was still confident about the Hogyoku. As long as he got the Hogyoku intact, it didn't matter where the other guy's confidence came from. What's Tsuneyashiro Tokunada up to? Tozen asked after a long pause. Aizen's eyes remained calm. You don't want revenge to cloud your judgment, so you gave it up. But you don't have to be patient. Now that Uehara Shiroha has settled on Noble Street, Tsuneyashiro Tokunada will self-destruct. A dragon doesn't lie with a snake. Tsuneyashiro Tokunada, with his noble title and petty cleverness, might handle ordinary people, but he would die if he crossed Uehara Shiroha. Even with the Tsuneyashiro family behind him, he'd put Uehara Shiroha on Noble Street to sick a tiger on a wolf. He saw Tsuneyashiro Tokunada and his family as toast. Now, he could see what surprises Uehara Kisuke, Kurosaki Ichigo, and Uehara Shiroha would bring. This world had been boring for too long. Chapter 100. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Kairaku Shunsui left, Uehara Shiraha tuned in to watch the show. He unleashed a flawless observation haki, blanketing Uehara Kisuke's secret hideout in the human world. The spiritual barrier there was incredibly strong, shielded by a murderous stone. Even Aizen couldn't pinpoint it, forced to slowly narrow down the search, but for Uehara Shiraha, none of that mattered. He breezed through the multiple layers of spiritual defense and got a clear view inside the base. Kurosaki Ichigo, fresh from the Hollow Crisis, had just clawed his way back from the brink, regaining his Soul Reaper powers. He was stronger, but still nowhere near ready. His goal? To bust into the Soul Society and rescue Rukia. When a Hollow attacked his family, Rukia broke Soul Society law by transferring her Soul Reaper abilities to him, saving his sister. His family was his soft spot. Ichigo felt he had to repay her, so, Uehara Kisuke set up 3 training sessions for him. First, dodge Yoruchi's natural power punch to get his spiritual energy flowing again. Second, sever the causal link of his spirit body and become a Soul Reaper again before his soul was completely hollowified. Right when his soul was about to be devoured, he found himself in his inner world face to face with a strange guy in a black trench coat. The guy was talking a mile a minute, but because Ichigo's Holy Letter D ability kicked in, total deafness, he couldn't hear a thing. Luckily, he still managed to reclaim his Soul Reaper mojo. The surge of spiritual power even shattered the 99-level improved binding spell. Then, Ichigo smashed the hollow mask on his face, becoming a Soul Reaper again. 2 down, 1 to go. The third test, knock the hat off Uehara Kisuke's head. No time limit. Ichigo figured it'd be a cakewalk. He wasn't the same guy he used to be. After all, he flat out declared, 5 minutes is all I need for this last one. Turns out, it was way harder than he thought. facing Uehara, who'd released his Zanpakuto. Ichigo was getting trashed and felt like he was about to meet his maker. At the last second, he was back in his inner world with the same weird dude. The guy said, "My name is." Ichigo strained to hear, but still nothing. Meanwhile, back at the Siriidii, in his mansion on Noble Street, Uehara Shiraha sipped wine and popped a peeled grape offered by his maid, relaxing while using observation haki to see everything. He instantly tapped into Ichigo's spiritual world, seeing Ichigo still yelling, "What did you say? I can't hear you." He nodded. That holy letter D lives up to the hype, that he saw the whole back and forth between Ichigo and Zangetsu. It looked like a friendly sparring match, but there was a sneaky look in from White. Hayasubichibai was the real puppet master. He'd blacked out Zangetsu's true name, preventing him from saying Yawatch. No name, no power. Zangetsu, nameless, couldn't let Ichigo follow the Quincy path. The head captain was secretly pulling all the strings to maintain the balance of the three worlds, no matter what. As for White, he boxed himself up and offered himself as a gift to Ichigo. White was a dedicated Zanpakuto, working hard for Ichigo, only to get no credit. Every time he tried to reveal his identity, Ichigo just went, "La la la. Can't hear you, you're lying, that you'd think it was a corny drama." Ichigo, having achieved Shirkai, was riding high and managed to slice Uehara Kisuke's body, acing the final test. Uehara glanced at his cracked blood mist shield and thought, if Hongji hadn't stepped in at the last second, I'd be down an arm. That's some impressive growth. That he picked up his tattered hat and complained, "Glad you passed, but did you really have to wreck my hat?" "Huh?" Ichigo asked, carrying Zangetsu and looking bewildered. "I just hit Shirkai, still getting the hang of it." "Don't blame me." After Shirkai, Zangetsu didn't have a normal guard or hilt. It looked all wrong. The massive spiritual pressure and the terrifying slash had freaked out the two kids watching. "Mr. Kurosaki, that won't cut it. You got a powerful slash, but you need to turn it into a proper move." Uehara adjusted his hat and said, "Otherwise, you won't stand a chance against the Soul Reapers in the Soul Society. You might not even survive. The enemies you're facing are way tougher than me." Ichigo, hearing Uehara's warning, looked serious but showed no sign of backing down. Uehara Shiraha saw Inoue Orihime, Sato Yasutora, and Ishida Yuryu had finished their training. Too, the traveling disaster squad was ready to roll. They went to the Siriidii through Uehara's special gate. Just like the original story, they ran into the world-cleaning scavenger, the Kotatsu. It operated on strict rules, and raw power couldn't stop it. The four pilgrims plus a cat escaped and landed near the White Gate of West Rukongai. Ichigo, way stronger than before, beat the gatekeeper, Jidanbo Ikenzaka, and broke into the Soul Society. But he accidentally met that sly fox Ikamaru Jin, who blasted him back with his Shinso. Ikamaru Jin wasn't there by accident. He'd been set up. Aizen knew Ichigo would show up in West Rukongai, since Uehara's territory was mostly in that area, so, he sent Ikamaru Jin to the White Gate to lie in wait. Ikamaru Jin deliberately showed mercy, a little howdy-do. It was meant to give Ichigo a taste of captain-level power and give him time to prepare for the chaos he was about to unleash. The more chaos, the better for Aizen's plans. Besides Aizen, Uehara Shiraha was keeping a close eye on Ichigo and his crew. It was like watching a soap opera, super entertaining. The next day, Squad 46 ordered Aburai Renji to escort Rukia to the repentance cell. That place was lined with murderous stones. Once locked in, there was no escape for a normal Soul Reaper. And a small window let the prisoner watch the Sokayaku execution device. As the execution drew closer, the sight of that gruesome device would put them under huge pressure, making them confess. That's why they called it the repentance cell. But Rukia stayed calm as could be. Leaving the repentance cell with mixed feelings, Aburai Renji ran into Aizen, who had bad intentions written all over him. After a friendly greeting, Aizen invited Renji for a private chat. In a private office, Aizen pretended to organize some documents and sighed. "It's been years since you transferred from Squad 5 to Captain Zaraki's squad. It's been too long since we talked. How's life?" "Captain Aizen, what's up?" Aburai Renji, not a social butterfly, cut him off. Aizen, annoyed by his rudeness, got straight to the point. "Do you really think Rukia deserves to die? She was overdue, yeah, and she illegally gave her powers to a human. those are serious crimes, but why did they cut her sentence from 35 days to 25? And why the double death penalty on a Soul Reaper who isn't a captain? Does that sound right? Abarai Renji was floored by Aizen's passion, his brain was spinning, but Aizen had a point, ignoring Rukia's noble bloodline. Did a low-ranking officer really deserve the double death penalty? The Sokayaku could obliterate a Soul Reaper's soul instantly, using it on Rukia was like using a bazooka to kill a mosquito. It was overkill. Anyone would think she desecrated the graves of Soul Society's founders. Seeing Abarai Renji wavering, Aizen hammered the point home. Something's been fishy from the start, like some unknown force is manipulating everything, I have a feeling. Uehara Shiraha, seeing Aizen reel in Abarai Renji, shook his head. You're the one behind it all, dude. You've got a sick sense of humor, Aizen. Aizen targeted Abarai Renji because the guy was a bonehead, easy to trick. Plus, it muddied the waters, mostly, it was for Aizen's twisted pleasure. He loved to watch people crack and enjoyed manipulating them, but with Uehara around, things were gonna break way harder than before. Uehara Shiraha ignored Aizen's game and focused on Kurosaki Ichigo. The story went pretty much the same as before. Ichigo and the gang busted into the Soul Society in a totally over-the-top way with the help of Shiba Kakaku. The Shiba family had the tech to get to the Soul King's palace. The Soul Society and the Soul King Palace defenses were tied together. Kakaku's cannon could bust through the Soul Society defenses, the four from the human world, Yoruchi Shihuin, as a cat, and Ganju Shiba all turned into cannonballs. The cannonballs zipped through the Soul Society's defenses and splattered down. The whole Soul Society was on high alert, seeing those invaders fall from the sky. Thanks to Ikimara Jin's release earlier, the Godiai 13 took the Hako incident dead serious. Soul Reapers patrolled every inch of the Soul Society. Hako meant spirits who invaded the Soul Society through unconventional means. It had happened before, but the invaders were usually weak, so, even though the Hako had caused a stir, the captains didn't sweat it. The Hako didn't seem all that tough, even a lieutenant could handle them. The massive response was for the nobles' safety. Most captains, except for Kuratsuchi Mayuri and Zaraki Kenpachi, watched from the sidelines. The skilled Hako made a ruckus with their surprise attack. Uehara Shiraha knew that Aizen would smooth things over, and Ichigo Kurosaki would make more and more noise until head captain Yamamoto unleashed Ryujin Jaka. Seeing the time was right, Uehara stood up, ready to clean house. In the Soul Society, the Hako was making a bigger and bigger mess. Sato Yasutora smashed through the Soul Society like a bulldozer, mowing down Soul Reaper soldiers. Ishida Yuryu handily defeated Jirobo Ikenzaka, the 7th seat of the 7th Division. Jirobo was the younger brother of Jidanbo Ikenzaka, the gatekeeper. Unlike his noble brother, he was a lowlife. Jirobo, known as Kamaitashi, used ranged weapons like Ishida Yuryu, but he was nowhere near as strong as Ishida. Even using dirty tricks, he got trashed and badly hurt. Even if he healed, he probably wouldn't be a Soul Reaper anymore. But the title came from Zaraki Soya. Zaraki Soya tried to give the title to Kuchiki Byakuya, but Byakuya turned his nose up at it. Kurosaki Ichigo outdid Ishida Yuryu and Sato Yasutora. He beat Madarame Mikaku, the 3rd seat of the 11th Division, and Abarai Renji, the lieutenant of the 6th Division, back-to-back. This was the Soul Society Abarai Renji, fighting at full power. Not the watered-down version from the human world. Madarame Ikaku's Shirkai was tricky, and his power was firmly at lieutenant level. Kurosaki Ichigo, reborn, now had lieutenant level strength. In a short time, Kurosaki Ichigo had gotten way stronger. He was now a serious threat to the Soul Society. The Research and Development Institute had raised the threat level of the Hako invasion. For the nobles on Noble Street, the Hako invasion was a blip on the radar. They partied on, clueless. Years of peace and privilege had made them soft. Uehara Shiraha saw them as pampered pigs. The Tsuneyoshiro family was holding a regular family meeting. The attendees were the real power players and the heirs in line to lead the family. Seeing the bigwigs of the Soul Society following his orders, clan leader Tsuneyoshiro Tokikawa was proud. He lived for the feeling of power. Power was what mattered. Even the powerful Soul Reaper captains had to bow to the Tsuneyoshiro family's authority. He turned to the reason for the meeting and asked, "Any news on the Imperial Army's order? Why did the 46 chambers issue that order?"